Chapter 127 Bottleneck. Chapter 127 Bottleneck, yesterday's regular chapter. Sorry about the late release. Also, with 264 votes and 3,028 reading lists, we also owe 2 extra chapters. We will definitely release these ASAP. The first time refining the building foundation, Chen Xiang failed. However, he found out it was indeed true that the difficulty in refining the building foundation was similar to that of a high-grade spirit level and 10 times harder than the refinement of the true elemental and the white jade Though he failed completely while refining high-grade spirit level but he had ACCU, Mulat experience from them. And regarding control, he had gained a lot of experience, or else he would not be able to refine using the brilliant flame dragon furnace for more than an hour, and that was equivalent to half of the refining process. If it was someone else, in the absence of the herbs for refining a high-grade spirit level they absolutely would not try to refine a building foundation Even if they wanted to refine a building foundation they would first refine a low-grade profound level If those alchemists came to know that Chen Xiang was using so many herbs for the building foundation unprofitably, they would definitely scold Chen Xiang to death. For these material, it could be said that Chen Xiang simply had no shortage of them, just give him some time, and he would have as much as he needed. As long as a seed was left with him, using the dragon saliva exercise, he would be able to grow a large amount of it. Just take the azure profound fruit for example. He had not even taken a full month to grow 20 of them. In addition to learning how to refine the building foundation Chen Xiang also created dragon saliva. Because he feared that his current materials were not enough for refining a building foundation Bit by bit time said, and in the blink of an eye 20 days said, while refining the building foundation Chen Xiang had already failed more than 50 times, and he was now only left with 8 set of herbs. The building foundation is a little bit harder than the white jade and the true elemental and I feel I've almost succeeded. At this time Chen Xiang was somewhat excited. After experiencing several failures, he had managed to grasp a bit of something, and it was exactly that subtle feeling. Su Meiyao had already said down her experience to Chen Xiang, allowing Chen Xiang to pay some attention regarding some important points which could allow Chen Xiang to take less detours. In this case, Chen Xiang was step by step getting closer to successfully refining the Now he was finally at the most crucial step of solidifying the He was confident, and if he was successfully able to refine the building foundation it would be much more handy when he once again went to refine the true elemental and the white jade The brilliant flame dragon furnace was radiating a blood-red light, and from time to time a hot qi would surge out from it. Both of Chen Xiang's hands were placed on the 2 places on the brilliant flame dragon furnace dedicated for hands, which allowed the alchemist to pour the flames, true qi and divine sense in. At this time in Chen Xiang's mind there was a sea of fire, where multiple 1-2s of spirit herbs were being baked by the flame at varying temperatures. He was slowly transforming them into powder, overflowing with colorful spirit qi, while the spirit qi drifted at the top, which were tyrannical as well as true bid. Chen Xiang used his divine sense to squeeze them together, for fusion and purification. At the same time, he also started integrating those herbs, transformed into powder in the sea of fire, and he could not allow any of them to be even a little bit burned, or else it would fall short. This was the test of an alchemist's divine sense. The flames were burning in the brilliant flame dragon furnace for 10 days and 10 nights, but outside it was just past half an hour. Even so, those herbs had not even completely fused. As the time went by, Chen Xiang was already drenched in his sweat, but his true qi was very vigorous, so he was not worried about his true qi consumption, but currently the consumption of his divine sense was very formidable, and this was because his divine sense had to take into account many powders, while at the same time he also had to appease various violent herbal spirit qis as he fused them together. Chen Xiang, using his divine sense, had already squeezed all of the various powders transformed from the herbs, and those colorful tyrannical herbal spirit qis had already calmed down and gradually started fusing. Now it was the most crucial step, which was to, in one breath, make the herbal spirit qi and the herbal powder fuse, and then solidify the dan. In this process there was no room for a single mistake, and if the spirit qi was not enough, or made even a little bit of herbal powder disperse, then everything would be for nothing. Chen Xiang had failed many times at this process. Herbal spirit qi and herbal powder fusion. Chen Xiang, using his divine sense, slowly cemented a dan from the herbal powder. Chen Xiang at this time dropped a drop of dragon saliva, and began to enter the final phase of solidifying the dan. Before he had failed dozens of times at this final moment, and the furnace had exploded. The brilliant flame dragon furnace was slightly trembling, and sweat was dripping from Chen Xiang's face like rain while his eyebrows were tightly knit together. His complexion was also somewhat pale. At this time he could clearly see that the building foundation dan, which was about to solidify in the brilliant flame dragon furnace, had fiercely started shaking, and it looked like it would explode at any time. Su Meiyao's beautiful hands were holding a silk towel tightly, anxiously watching Chen Xiang, and Bai Yuyu's ice-cold and bright pretty eyes were also open wide, with a look of encouragement in her eyes looking at Chen Xiang. Would I fail once again? This has already happened to me more than 10 times, this is my bottleneck? The bottleneck of my spirit. My divine sense is not enough, so I need to break through. Chen Xiang thought, and at this time all his divine sense was almost dried up, but he still needed to continue. Usually, divine sense still occupied a pivotal position, such as some martial arts required very high divine sense. Divine sense was also required to gather true qi outside the body, otherwise true qi would scatter. But in such cases there was enough divine sense. However, when forging weapon and refining dawn, such as alchemists refining some relatively high-level dan, or refiners engraving lots of spirit veins on spirit weapon, when the divine sense was not enough, that would lead to failure. If martial artists completely depleted their divine sense, it would be the same as an energetic man without any spirit, unable to play out any strength of his body. Or they would even fall in a state of drowsiness. Chen Xiang had now consumed his divine sense to his limit, but also didn't know by virtue of what he was able to sustain. He felt he was about to fall down, so Chen Xiang operated his Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise, and controlled the vigorous true qi in his body, making the true qi madly impact the meridians, so that his whole body was covered in endless pain, so that he could stay awake. At the same time he exercised his power to fuse his true qi and spirit to quickly condense out divine sense. Chen Xiang tortured his own body till blood was overflowing, mixing with sweat on his body, exuding a strange stench. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu both knew Chen Xiang's reason for doing so. Do not force yourself. Give up. Su Meiyao faintly sighed and gently said. She could not bear to see as Chen Xiang continued his self-mutilation. Give up? Chen Xiang knew if this time he was not successful, not only would he fail refining the building foundation dan, but also he would be unable to break through his own bottleneck. When he remembered Elder Dan using her superior might against him, he had no power to resist, and he remembered Liao Xiaoyun humiliating him, trampling his dignity. He told himself, in any case if he wanted to become stronger he had to endure. He needed to refine out the building foundation dan, and this was the only way possible for him advance to the true martial realm in a short time. Not only was Chen Xiang currently sweating, but he was still bleeding, and in order to keep himself awake, he continued the self-mutilation of his own body. Chen Xiang gradually lost consciousness, but his subconscious continued to condense out divine sense, constantly pressing on that restless building foundation Dan in the brilliant flame dragon furnace. Unconsciously, Chen Xiang suddenly felt losing the sense of his own body, and no matter how he tortured himself, he was unable to feel any pain. Chen Xiang suddenly awakened, however. He found himself in a sea full of white light, and this was shocking for him. He also saw an infant inside this sea, very small, like a newborn baby, and this infant had his eyes closed, looking very cute. Suddenly, that baby opened his eyes, and Chen Xiang was fiercely startled, because what this baby could see, he was also seeing. The baby smiled to him, and Chen Xiang also left the bizarre sea, again returning to the state of alchemy. He surprisingly found out that his divine sense was actually very abundant and many times more powerful than before. It was as if he had not consumed any of his divine sense before. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu also felt something strange, and they originally thought Chen Xiang was giving up, but saw Chen Xiang's raised mouth, exposing a trace of confident smile. "Just a moment pause," said Bai, and Chen Xiang opened his eyes, raised his head and insanely laughed. "Ha ha. I have refined building foundation Dan." Chapter 128 Ruthless Devil Skill. Chapter 128 Ruthless Devil Skill. Tuesday regular release. Chen Xiang had not opened the brilliant flame dragon furnace, but he was convinced that there was a building foundation Dan inside it. In the midst of his laughter, both his eyes shed tears as only he was aware on how much torture he had gone through to achieve this result. 19 years old, and he had not yet refined a high-grade spirit level Dan, but he had directly refined a building foundation Dan. Even Su Meiyao was very, very shocked. Originally she had wanted Chen Xiang to completely refine all the herbs he possessed before once again refining after the new herbs had grown out. In this way, he would eventually be successful. She had expected him to require at least 3 or 5 years, as she had refined a profound level Dan in a similar phase. On. After Chen Xiang laughed for a while, he fell down, asleep. He was extremely tired. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu went over and opened the brilliant flame dragon furnace. They saw a crystal Dan with numerous golden and azure lines. This was the building foundation Dan, and a high-grade quality one at that. In fact, most of the Dan Chen Xiang refined had been high-grade quality, which was extremely hard to achieve. The divine sense of this brat has actually reverted to its pinnacle state. No, it's even stronger than before. Bai Yuyu pressed her cold, beautiful hands on Chen Xiang's forehead before shouting with surprise. It was also the first time Bai Yuyu had ever touched Chen Xiang. However, only Chen Xiang's body needed to recuperate and rest. His mind was clearly aware. He could clearly feel Bai Yuyu's cold, beautiful hands. It gave him a wonderful feeling and even put him in an absent-minded state. "Junior sister, aren't you going to help him clean his body? I remember that you often use some dubious methods to reward him," Bai Yuyu said, revealing a smile with a hint of elegance on her face. Su Meiyao lightly snorted before softly laughing. "Senior sister, this brat seems to like you more. Although he and me are more intimate, I feel as if he cares more about you. As such, when you're gentle towards him, this brat is happy to death. I guess he is rather desperate in order to win your favor." Bai Yuyu's complexion turned cold, yet that ice-cold white face of hers was slightly tinted red. She coldly replied, "Don't talk nonsense, you do not know how he looks at your body? He could not wait to strip off your clothes and push you down. Obviously he prefers you, right? Besides, last time you kissed him, it turned him into a pig." Su Meiyao just lightly laughed in response before directly stripping off Chen Xiang's clothes. Suddenly, Chen Xiang was left with nothing on his body, yet while looking directly at him, Su Meiyao didn't even have a tint of red of her face. This brat is truly ruthless towards himself. However, his body looks much better compared to when we see it from inside the ring. Su Meiyao said with a mischievous smile while rinsing off the stains on Chen Xiang's body. Senior sister, come help me. We have already seen this brat's body. Do you not want to do something for him now? Su Meiyao said with a soft laugh. Currently Chen Xiang could not move his body after it had been badly tortured, but after hearing the conversations of the two girls, all sorts of complex and strange emotions surged in his heart. Bai Yu went over and coldly snorted. I do not know how many times I've seen his body, yet I am unable to dispel my anger. Although she said so, she still came up with a towel and carefully wiped Chen Xiang's stained body. Chen Xiang secretly despised both of these female rogues. They stayed inside the ring and had actually repeatedly peeped on him from inside it. Of course, he was also somewhat happy. After all, both beauties had seen his body many times. He suddenly felt somewhat cheap. Meanwhile they were complacent looking at him. Senior sister, I worry that one day you will not need me, Su Meiyao said. Her pretty face was filled with a worried expression as she and Bai Yu were cleaning Chen Xiang's robust body. Bai Yu was silent for a while before sighing. When my great hatred has been resolved, I will disperse my ruthless devil skill. At that time, you have to protect me. Su Meiyao revealed a smile. Don't worry, at that time this brat will definitely protect you. While speaking, she patted Chen Xiang's chest. Bai Yu no longer spoke. She knew that Chen Xiang would certainly be very strong in future, and it would be no problem for him to protect her. But at the same time, she was worried that when she had no strength, no one would care about her. Su Meiyao said, Senior sister, Master only cultivated the ruthless devil skill, because of us, and it lead to his own demise. I do not want you to turn out like that. I know you do not need to worry about me. I have a sense of moderation. Bai Yu's complexion became somewhat complicated. Chen Xiang had not expected these pair of sisters to have this kind of story, but he always felt that Su Meiyao had hid some things from Bai Yu. Chen Xiang recovered very quickly. Just as Su Meiyao and Bai Yu were helping him clean his body, he suddenly sat up. Thanks for both sisters' concerns. Chen Xiang smiled, before taking out his clothes and putting it on. Su Meiyao and Bai Yu had touched Chen Xiang's body over and over. They had not intended to tell this to Chen Xiang, but he had suddenly woken up. This made them somewhat angry and ashamed. Both of their enchanting and cold faces were fully blush. Hi+ing. Both of the beauties were grinding their teeth while staring at Chen Xiang. You were awake? Bai Yu coldly asked. Previously, they had been conversing and done nothing, but it was seldomly this shameful for her. Chen Xiang giggled and said, Nope, I just woke up. I had not thought both sisters would be so considerate and personally help me take a bath. Tell me honestly, have you or have you not heard what junior sister and I were talking about before? Bai Yu's voice and complexion instantly went below absolute zero as invisible slaughter chi spread open, making Chen Xiang tremble. Yes, but I did not do so intentionally. I had already lost sense of my body, but my divine sense still remained. Chen Xiang truthfully replied. Seeing Bai Yu's complexion becoming more ugly, he quickly said, Sister Yu, I will never speak about you peeping on me, and I'll definitely be there to protect you. I know what the ruthless devil skill can do to people. I'm also worried about you. Forget it. Bai Yu closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Thinking of the shameful things she said before, her face could not help but become a little hot. Bai Yu had soon tried to forget, but Su Meiyao had not. She snorted to hide her shyness, and came beside Chen Xiang and pinched his arm. But she did not use much of her strength, because it was Chen Xiang. Wasting my good intentions for you. To think you even intentionally pretended to be asleep, just to tease me and senior sister. Su Meiyao angrily said. It was the first time Chen Xiang had seen her so angry, but strangely it was captivating and made her look even more enchanting. Chen Xiang secretly praised it in his heart. Sister Meiyao, you look really nice even when you're angry. Chen Xiang didn't know what was wrong with him, but he could not help but blurt out the truth. This made Su Meiyao angrily stomp in response. Chen Xiang scratched his head, grinned and asked, "Two sisters, where does my body look good, and how many times have you looked?" Bai Yuyu did not answer and just sat there with her eyes closed, pretending to have not heard the question. Su Meiyao was also speechless. Could it be they were going to be forced to say they were bored, and that was why they would secretly look at him? "Later on you're not allowed to mention this," Bai Yuyu coldly ordered. Although she actually didn't care much about it, she still acted domineering, in order to avoid Chen Xiang's continued probing of this topic. Su Meiyao snorted and changed the subject. "Tell me about the process during your alchemy. Why did your divine sense suddenly revert back to its pinnacle state?" Speaking of this, Chen Xiang was also puzzled, and he quickly described what had occurred during that time. "You really saw a baby?" Bai Yuyu hurriedly asked as she came beside Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang nodded his head, and Su Meiyao also came over with a look of shock as she glanced at Bai Yuyu. "Relax, do not move. I am going to take a look at your consciousness." Bai Yuyu extended both of her hands and placed them above Chen Xiang's cheek. Chen Xiang's face was being stroked by a pair of cold and soft hands and made him secretly shout, "Cool. Sister Yuyu, it feels comfortable when you touch my face." "Don't talk nonsense," Bai Yuyu coldly replied in a low voice. Chapter 129 True Martial Realm. Chapter 129 True Martial Realm Bonus Chapter for 3,000 readers on novel updates. Next bonus chapter at 3,100. Both of the beauties were leaning against Chen Xiang as he was blandly breathing in their body fragrance. He was enjoying Bai Yuyu's beautiful hands as they transmitted a cool feeling, and he wished that this feeling could last just a little bit longer. After a short moment, Bai Yuyu sucked in a mouthful of air and retracted her hands. Nodding towards Su Meiyao, "It's true, I saw that baby." Su Meiyao was surprised as a slight smile appeared on her face. Then she too pressed her hands on the sides of Chen Xiang's cheeks and closed her eyes. Chen Xiang was looking closely at that enchanting and mesmerizing face of Su Meiyao. He could not help but gradually move his sight downwards before the view made him absent-minded. Two snow-white lumps were squeezed, causing deep ravines. It was so beautiful that he could not help but want to lightly bite on them. "In the end, just what is that, baby?" Chen Xiang asked uncertainly. Su Meiyao squeezed his face before happily laughing. "That is the appearance of you when you were but a child, and at the same time it is also your divine sense state and is somewhat similar to your soul. However, it is called a spirit and is basically the combined form of your divine sense and soul. Is it very formidable?" Chen Xiang, seeing Su Meiyao laughing with happiness, knew that this was definitely not a common thing. "Very formidable, you have entered the first stage of SHI+2. Bai Yuyu nodded her head towards him. "I hope that what you just promised me was not just empty talk." TLN, SHI+2, Shen Dao, Way of Spirit. Like martial arts, Wu Dao, it is a way of cultivating your spirit. SHI+2 is a Panese term, can know about it in the wiki. SHI+2? Chen Xian was confused, but he saw that Bai Yuyu had a bizarre warm expression in her eyes when she looked at him, and he knew that he had gained Bai Yuyu's recognition. This made him very excited. Just as Su Meiyu had said before, he indeed slightly preferred Bai Yuyu. He didn't know why, but he always got the feeling that Bai Yuyu, this ice-cold beauty, made others feel very much affection and love towards her. SHI+2 is using the spirit to enter the Tao. It is a way of cultivation for your divine sense. It is different from martial arts, Wu Dao, as martial arts is mainly used to release the power of your body. Meanwhile, SHI+2 is releasing the power of your spirit. If you cultivate it to a certain point, your spirit would even be able to leave your body and wander in each world, one by one. It would be invisible and stateless, yet it possesses Armageddon might. This is the lifetime goal and strived for by many strong martial artists. Bai Yu said with a look of yearning along with a sliver of helplessness in her eyes. This was because she cultivated using the ruthless devil skill. And if it was not dispersed later, she would become someone without the 7 emotions and 6 desires. Although at that time she would also be extremely powerful. TLN. 7 emotions and 6 desires. 7 emotions: happiness, anger, sadness, joy, love, hate, and desire. 6 desires: eyes, i.e., from what you see, ears, i.e., from what you hear, nose, i.e., from what you smell, tongue, i.e., from what you taste, body, i.e., from what you touch, and pa-s, shaun, from heart. Yin. So basically the senses plus pa-s, shaun. Imagine you were sitting alone at home while your spirit drifts between heaven and earth, flies into the sky and enters into the ground. Omnipotent yet not any weaker than the strength of your body. Can you imagine how formidable that is? As long as you need to, you would be able to shape your own body using the world's spirit chi. Su Meiyao was very excited and her beautiful face was briming with a tender and beautiful smile. She too had much longing for that state. Undead and indestructible. Chen Xiang was mind-boggled and could not help but mutter. Correct. In order to enter SHI+2 you would need to have a very rare and favorable condition which you have just achieved. That baby is the newborn state of your spirit. After it reaches adulthood, that baby will have the exact same appearance as you. Bai Yu said. In the future you simply need to cultivate your divine sense. As for specifically how to do so, neither me nor senior sister are clear about it. I also believe that not many people would know how to either because very few people have cultivated this state. Su Meiyao was somewhat regretful. Chen Xiang's mood was very good at this time. Not only was he able to refine the building foundation Dan, but his divine sense had also advanced by leaps and bounds. In addition to all of this, he had also entered SHI+2. Of course, what made him happy the most was the fact that Bai Yu, this ice-cold beauty, now had a much better attitude towards him. This is all due to the encouragement from both you sisters. Although at that time you told me to give up, I know in your heart that you very much wanted me to be successful. I also did not want to disappoint you too, so I was able to break through the limit of my divine sense. Chen Xiang smiled. It didn't hurt nor tickle to flatter the two beauties. Continue your alchemy and quickly enter the true martial realm. Bai Yu said and then stepped aside. Su Meiyao came to Bai Yu's side and leaned against her body and embraced her waist. Su Meiyao's face had a very worried look. Chen Xiang was now left with 7 sets of herbs. He had also recovered, so he seized the time to do alchemy, and he did not to waste another minute. 3 days passed, and since then Chen Xiang had successfully refined 4 building foundation dawn. Although he had failed 3 times, he was already very satisfied. Chen Xiang could not help but sigh while looking at the 5 building foundation dawn. He had heard that a dan costs a good few 10,000 crystal stones, but there was no standard price tag. Ordinarily, the only way to get one was through an auction or by personally requesting one from an alchemist. After Chen Xiang swallowed a dan, he began to cultivate. All the true qi was compressed in the true element grains inside the beasts in his dantian. Chen Xiang hadn't noticed that he had been missing for more than 8 months now. This was more than enough time for him to elude his pursuers and return to the extreme martial sect, yet they had received no information of him. Many people speculated that Chen Xiang was so seriously injured after the escape that he was unable to heal his wounds and died in the wilderness, his corpse eaten by the demon beast. Chen Xiang had been hiding in the mountainside and cultivating. He had already finished eating the 5 building foundation dawn. The true qi in the building foundation dan was beyond what he had speculated and turned up to be so much more that it led to there being a large period of time needed to fully refine it. It was night time. After a heavy snowfall, the entire mountain forest was snow white. A silver moon lay hanging in the night sky, illuminating the white snow. Cold wind whistled through the forest as a man wearing a black STURDY outfit appeared. He casted a high-level qing gong and treaded on the tree leaves, skimming past the top of the forest. His speed was extremely fast. Furthermore, his steps left no trace on top of the pure unblemished white snow. At this time Chen Xiang was enjoying the rush and was releasing all the excitement in his heart. He had been depressed after staying in the mountainside for so long. Now he had finally broken through to the true martial realm and became the youngest martial artist to ever do so. He flew all the way while roaring at the same time. His roar echoed in the silent mountain forest and shook the leaves of the trees. Inside the 5 divine beasts within Chen Xiang's dantian, 7 of the true element grains had become extremely bright, while 3 element grains from the azure dragon beast form were now brightly lit. This was all due to the large amount of true qi from the building foundation dawn. When he was congealing, it allowed all 5 of the divine beasts to congeal 10 bright true element grains. He could be considered in the second level of the true martial realm. However, he was actually only in the first level. His strength remained beyond that of those in the same level, even among true martial realm martial artists. Chen Xiang quickly left and headed towards Fragrant City. He wanted to buy a lot of materials for the White Jade Dan and the True Elemental Dan. After he learned how to successfully refine them, he would go and obtain the level 4 Alchemist certificate before returning to the extreme martial sect. Along the way, Chen Xiang occasionally threw a True Qi Dan in the air before catching it with his mouth. In his eyes, True Qi Dan could only serve as snack. The true martial realm's strength is truly not in the same realm. I feel like I could casually demolish an entire mountain, Chen Xiang said with excitement. He opened his mouth to catch a recently thrown True Qi Dan in the air. Suddenly a white silhouette flashed before him in the air. That thing robbed the True Qi Dan. Bastard. You actually dared to steal what belongs to me. Currently Chen Xiang had no place to test his strength. He was still in a good mood, but now that someone or something had bothered him, it would be the perfect practice target for him. Chen Xiang released his divine sense, and soon noticed that thing was quickly fleeing straight ahead. He quickly released the vermilion bird fire wing, and soon caught up. He did so because he could not catch up with that thing just by relying on his feet. What the hell is that thing? It's actually so fast. Chen Xiang could not help but shout in surprise. He was now in the true martial realm, yet that thing still ran faster than him. If he didn't have these wings, it would be extremely difficult for him to catch up. Soon Chen Xiang saw down below in the forest a small white squirrel leaping across the trees with an incredibly fast speed. The culprit turned out to be an extremely fast demon beast. It's not an ordinary demon beast. Be a little careful, its speed is very terrifying. Su Meiyao exhorted. Chapter 130 White Dragon. Chapter 130 White Dragon bonus chapter for 250 vote. Next bonus chapter at 300. Chen Xiang quickly dived down and released his dragon aura because most demon beasts would cower in terror at a dragon's might. After that white squirrel sensed the pressure of a dragon, it could not help but be distracted for a moment and hit the trunk of a tree, creating a very comical scene. Just as Chen Xiang was preparing to smack a deadly palm towards that squirrel, a burst of white light soared from that squirrel to his surprise. But that white light soon disappeared, revealing a white-robed little girl who had a fair face and delicate skin, sitting cleanly onto the snow. She was using her cute little hands to hold her head, flat mouth and tears on the edge of her eyes. She looked like she was about to cry and looked very adorable. Seeing a squirrel suddenly turn into a 7 or 8-year-old lovely little girl, Chen Xiang could not help but be taken aback. Although he heard that demon beasts could change forms, only very strong ones could do so. But this furtive squirrel, apart from having extremely high speed, did not look strong at all. Why did you steal my true chi Dan? Chen Xiang asked with a cold face. Although she was hateful, she was still a lovely little girl. However, Chen Xiang didn't have a nice expression on his face as he glared at her. I was hungry, you confused me and knocked my head, it hurts. I hate you. That little girl looked up and 2 drops of tears had already dropped down from her watery eyes. Biting her lips, she glared at Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang suddenly caught a glimpse of 2 small things on the little girl's head. It looked very similar to small antlers. Antlers? No, was it not a dragon's horn? Chen Xiang quickly associated the two because he recalled that 8 months ago, a dragonling had been born. Was this little girl a transformation of that dragonling? Dragon! This little girl is actually a dragon. Anyway, no matter what means, we must keep this dragon. Su Meiyao's voice became very excited and quickly exclaimed. She is strong. Although she is a dragonling, she is by no means weak. Bai Yu warned. Suddenly, Chen Xiang's mind became blank. He had totally not expected to encounter this dragonling. After the shock Pa's said, he quickly calmed down. He then leaned over, took a few grains of true Qi Dan and held it towards the girl. His face had a look of shame and with a gentle smile he said, Little sister, I'm sorry. If you had told me you were hungry I would not have chased you. I thought you were a thief. That little girl sniffed the 5 true Qi Dan in Chen Xiang's hands. Her tears didn't fall again as her big eyes rotated a bit. Like lightning, her hands reached over and head away the true Qi Dan from Chen Xiang's palm. Seeing such a speed made Chen Xiang suck his own tongue. Can you forgive me now? Chen Xiang sat back and watched the little girl's delicate and cute little face. After that little girl devoured those 5 true Qi Dan with relish, she revealed a sweet smile. After you give me 10 more of those things I'll forgive you. Chen Xiang had not expected this little girl to actually be so smart at such a young age. It was as if this dragonling had not just been born recently. Is it that after a dragon was born, their wisdom would develop very quickly? Chen Xiang had a lot of true Qi Dan. He took out 20 of them and handed them all over. The little girl soon ate them all. At this time, the little girl had an irresistible expression in her eyes as she waited for Chen Xiang. A neat and pitiful appearance, it was so potent that it made Su Meiyao anxious, and she almost ran out to hug that little girl. Chen Xiang was now akin to taking out candy to beguile a child. He once again took out 10 true Qi Dan before asking, Little sister, how can you transform? My name is Sister Long, do not call me little sister. The little girl interrupted him, TLN equals dragon sister. Oh, Sister Long, why can you transform into a little squirrel? Chen Xiang asked. The little girl suddenly giggled. Just a moment ago, you called me Sister Long. This brother is really stupid. Looking at you being so stupid, I will tell you. I'm a dragon. Whatever beast I see, I can transform into them. Formidable, right? Chen Xiang's mouth slightly twitched. He had actually been cheated. He originally thought this little girl was smart, but had completely not expected her to be so high profile to the point where she revealed that she was a dragon. Moron, you're not thinking why I dared to say I am a dragon, are you? The little girl mischievously laughed. Chen Xiang was once again taken back by surprise. Just a moment he had indeed thought of this. Fool, I'm very clever. I also know that you can tell that I'm a dragon. The little girl grabbed a handful of snow and squeezed it into Hello. With a mischievous laugh, she threw it straight towards Chen Xiang. Just before Chen Xiang was about to react, that smashed right on his face. It made the little girl even more happy. My name is Long Shui. I am a newly born white dragon. Long Shui mischievously laughed and said, Previously I heard someone tell you that I'm a dragon, and you should do anything to keep me. Am I right? Chen Xiang was shocked, Bai Yuyu and Su Meiyao were shocked as well. That dragonling girl could actually hear their voices despite them being inside the ring. Long Shui looked at Chen Xiang's hand. Although there was an invisible ring, it seemed as if this dragonling could actually see it. Chen Xiang suddenly had a feeling that he was being completely seen through by this little girl. Good. Very formidable. Yin and Yang Divine Vein S.H.I. Plus into Infant Soul, and your cultivated martial art is also our dragon family's most powerful dragon-slaying divine martial art, the Tai Chi subduing dragon divine exercise. You also seem to be in possession of the Azure Dragon slaughtering devil blade that was refined with the help of our dragon family's Azure Dragon. Long Shui's small face was filled with shock. She had not expected in this world that a single human had actually collected all these heaven-defying things. Chen Xiang gulped. He was ever more surprised than the little girl inside his heart. This feeling was a little bit uncomfortable because he had just been totally seen through by this young girl. You should be Chen Xiang who was being searched by those group of people from before. In the forest I had heard many people mentioning your name. I know that you're a very powerful guy. Long Shui licked her lips and once more used a hungry expression as she looked at Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang gulped. In his heart he was even more surprised. This feeling was a little bit uncomfortable, because he had been totally seen through by this girl. Chen Xiang was shocked. After a sigh, he took out a box of True Qi Dan. Little girl, although I am not a good person, you will absolutely not find a single good soul who can give you this kind of thing to eat every day. Chen Xiang smiled. He calmed himself down and could see this little girl also had ideas to be together with him. Indeed. If I expose my ident, 1. Tai as a dragon, it would become very troublesome for me. You have so many good things, but you should not have any ideas to fight with me. Nom nom nom. Long Shui nodded her head while she ate those True Qi Dan like she was eating rice. It was clear that she had been hungry for a very long time. I can give you these things to eat, but I also have much better things, provided that you give me some help? Although you look like a little girl, you are by no means stupid. Chen Xiang said. Long Shui stuffed those True Qi Dan inside her mouth. While chewing, she also spoke at the same time, looking very cute. This made Chen Xiang unable to help himself as he touched her cheek. Although I don't know how you cultivated out S.H.I. plus into infant soul. I know that you definitely don't know a way to cultivate it, however I do. You should know that we dragons from the very start do not cultivate our bodies but instead practice S.H.I. plus into until we are able to congeal out our bodies, only then will we break our egg S.A.E.L.L.S. Chapter 131 Mark of the Dragoness. Chapter 131 Mark of the Dragoness people are seldom able to cultivate S.H.I. plus into. Even Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu did not know how to do so. If there was no guide and he were to carelessly cultivate, it would be easy to take a wrong turn. Seeing Long Shui being able to transform into a squirrel, Chen Xiang believed what she just said was the truth, because such a thing could only be achieved with the invisible and stateless spirit. I call this the 72 transformations. This is a way to manipulate spiritual power that only those who can cultivate S.H.I. plus into can use. This is what I learned as soon as I broke out of my egg S.A.E.L.L. It should be an inheritance pas, said down by my parents when I was born. They taught me a lot of things and most of them are inside my head. Long Shui with a delicate and sweet voice complacently said. Do you know the dragon-slaying divine martial technique? Chen Xiang asked. In his heart he was moved. Of course I do. Long Shui replied in a delicate and sweet voice. So you agree to cooperate with me? And, although you are not a good person, you cannot be considered as a bad one either, as such I reluctantly agree. Long Shui replied. She extended her delicate and lovely pinky finger. Quickly, do pinky promise? After the pinky promise, we cannot go back on our words. This childish act made Chen Xiang secretly stifle a giggle inside, but he still extended his pinky finger and hooked it with Long Xue's. But who could expect that when their two pinky fingers hooked up with each other a bright light would suddenly appear? Alright. This is our dragon family and humankind contract. Later on, if you try to lay your vicious hands on me, then you will definitely be in a lot of pain. Long Xue giggled with a mischievous smile as she extended her beautiful little hands as if begging for true Qi Dan. Currently, in Chen Xiang's opinion, the true Qi Dan were indeed basically jelly beans, which were now being eaten like snacks by this little dragoness. Little girl, in the future, are you going to follow alongside me? Why don't you go inside this ring? Chen Xiang asked. He intended to have this adorable and lovely girl accompany Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu inside the ring and also play with them. Long Xue shook her little head and replied, "It wouldn't work. I'm unable to enter the SPAC inside storage equipment. They have no effect on me because I cultivate SHI+2. Obviously, Chen Xiang could not allow this little dragoness to always follow beside him. Not even mentioning that it would be rather inconvenient, her safety was also a very big issue. Do not worry, I have a way to solve this. Long Xue laughed before she suddenly transformed into a white glow that shot towards Chen Xiang's arm. He only felt some warmth on his arm before a very strong power could be felt coming from his arm. He was very shocked. This warm type of feeling was spread out from his left arm to the left part of his chest. He quickly took off his clothes and saw a lifelike white dragon bearing fangs and brandis HI+ing claws that twisted from his left arm to his left chest. It was as if a tattoo had been drawn on his upper left body using special means. The entire mark was exuding white light and looked very beautiful. Combined with Chen Xiang's robust muscles, the white dragon tattoo made him exude a bizarre and unique charm. Of course, the thing Chen Xiang was most shocked about was Long Xue's strength. He could clearly tell how powerful she was, and it was many times more than him. I'm formidable, right? Like this, I will not be in your way when I follow you. Long Xue said in a tender voice. She was actually able to transmit her voice very clearly, although it looked like the white dragon tattoo was talking to Chen Xiang. When there are other people around, don't say anything, Chen Xiang exhorted. At this time he was somewhat worried because this little dragoness was clearly a bit naughty and very cunning. I know that. I'm not stupid like you, my human brother, Long Xue replied as she smiled mischievously. This time she used her divine sense to respond. Chen Xiang gave a low humph, before breaking into a gallop and proceeded straight for Fragrant City. Not long after, Long Xue started chattering continuously with Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu. This was the first time since Chen Xiang got acquainted with Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu that he saw them talk to other people. Of course, this is only because Long Xue was now following Chen Xiang. Even if Fragrant City was covered in the white snow, it still looked beautiful. The entire city was drifting with a soothing fragrance, and it was very HI+ing. Not many crystal stones were left over from the last time Chen Xiang sold the metal spirit fruit. While there was a set of materials left for refining a building foundation dan, it was for him to plant as a seed to use in the future. Fortunately, he had refined a lot of true Qi Dan. He took out the remaining 200 as the rest had already been given to Long Xue for her to eat. A true Qi Dan is equal to 500 crystal stones, so 200 Dan was precisely 100,000 crystal stones. Chen Xiang went to Danxiang Tower to sell them. This time too Mrs. Li was responsible for trading and recognized Chen Xiang in a single glance. After all, she was the governor's wife and had seen his portrait pop up many times. Chen Xiang had disappeared in the vicinity of Fragrant City. Obviously this matter was of great concern for the governor, as the extreme martial sects Dean personally seeked him out and request him to help find Chen Xiang. Mrs. Li, I've come once again, this time with 200 true Qi Dan. Chen Xiang said with a slight smile. Are you Chen Xiang, young Master Chen? Mrs. Li asked. There was clear surprise in her eyes because it was rumored that Chen Xiang had already been killed. She had not expected him to suddenly appear in front of her, and even take out 200 true Qi Dawn to sell. Just after reaching Fragrant City, Chen Xiang rushed directly to Danxiang Tower. He didn't get to learn about what had occurred during his seclusion. With his advancement of strength and divine sense, he could now clearly probe Mrs. Li's strength. It turns out that she was a true martial realm martial artist of the 2nd level. Mrs. Li can still recognize this brat. I'm truly honored. Chen Xiang was slightly surprised in his heart, but still responded with a smile. It's really hard to not recognize you now that the Beast Martial Sect placed a 300,000 bounty on your head. In order to find you, many people turn the city and its outskirts inside out. Mrs. Li exclaimed. Chen Xiang's brows wrinkled. Humph! Anyone who want to take my head for the crystal stones reward can come and try. No matter how many come to try and take my head, they will all end up dead. While he stated this, a huge amount of slaughter chi was released, making even Mrs. Li retreat a few steps back. Her eyes were filled with fear. She had no expected such a young person to contain such heavy and dense slaughter chi. If she was an ordinary person, she would have definitely fainted from the pressure and resulting fear from this level of slaughter chi. Chen Xiang's strength also made Mrs. Li somewhat doubtful. She was unable to clearly sense Chen Xiang's power, but she felt that he was clearly a lot stronger than before. Here's 100,000 crystal stones. Right, young master, I have already inquired the dean about the person you mentioned last time. If you want to see her, you would have to stay here for a while. It would be a lot safer for you to stay here actually. Danxiang Taoyuan and the extreme martial sect have very good relations. Also, your dean said that if you came back here, I would have to try my best to keep you here. Mrs. Li regained her wits and gradually said everything. She now finally understood Chen Xiang's worth, and why even the extreme martial sect's dean had personally come to pay a visit. Chen Xiang nodded his head and laughed. Then thanks a lot. I'll go buy some herbs. If that girl called Hua Yueyun comes to find me, feel free to directly call me, don't worry about bothering me. 20 sets of white jade dan herbs. The total cost was 40,000 crystal stones. 20 sets of true elemental dan herbs, and the total cost was 30,000 crystal stone. In just a short moment, Chen Xiang spent well over half of his total crystal stones. However, Chen Xiang was sure he would be able to smoothly refine the 2 different types of high-grade spirit level dawn. To Chen Xiang's surprise, he was allocated in the 20th floor. It was said that all the people who resided on this floor were of Bli background. While not all of them were outstanding alchemists, they were at least martial artists on the same level as Mrs. Li. This gesture made Chen Xiang feel flattered and also put him at ease. At the very least, it was indeed very safe here. TLN. Hi guys, I'm a bit busy till Tuesday, so any missed chapter or any bonus chapter due, I'll make up for it either on Tuesday or definitely on Wednesday. Thanks for your support. Chapter 132 Hua Xiangyue. Chapter 132 Hua Xiangyue. After Chen Xiang successfully refined the building foundation dan, this precious low-grade profound level dan, it would now be smooth and easy for him to refine the white jade dan and true elemental dan. After only a few failed attempts, he was successful in refining the latter out. It also just took 3 days of time. White jade dan, 15. True elemental dan, 20. Whenever he refined a set of herbs to make the true elemental dan, the little greedy dragoness, Long Shui, took away half of them. However, with just 1 set of herbs, he was able to refine 4 true elemental dawn. Chen Xiang was profusely sweating inside his private room, but a familiar sense wafted into his nose before he saw the stunning beauty who was reclined on his bed. The girl wore a light pink veil which covered her crystal white skin and voluptuous body. She bore a magnificent and noble temperament that added to her already mesmerizing charm. Chen Xiang would never be able to forget this alluring and bewitching figure that belonged to the mature, tender, and breathtaking beauty in front of him. He immediately recognized that this enchanting, noble and dignified girl was Hua Yueyun, whom he had met in the secular world. "This is my bed, quickly get off." Chen Xiang didn't know what to say, so he unconsciously blurted out this sentence. With a sweet smile hanging on her beautiful face, her pretty eyes were filled with sorrow and a special type of hate as she gradually got off his bed. She softly laughed. "I know that you are regretting not accepting me as your maidservant. Aren't you very upset?" Chen Xiang indeed had some regret in his heart, but his face didn't reveal an ounce of it. He indifferently said, "I've found you, now tell me your real name." "Hua Xiangyue." The beauty took out a fragrant silk towel and wiped the sweat off Chen Xiang's forehead. She lightly chuckled, "Doesn't my name sound nice? TLN. Flower, fragrance, moon. Moon of flower fragrance. Your name sounds good, and you're quite beautiful. You're also powerful, in the end. Who are you?" Chen Xiang shook his head and sighed as he bluntly stated his question. Hua Xiangyue was sitting beside a table as she slowly lowered a teapot. In each of her gestures a unique charm was overflowing. The scene was very pleasing to the eye. "I'm just a maidservant. It just so happens that my master is Danxiang Taoyuan's dean. However, I can leave Danxiang Taoyuan whenever I want to, but it's just that this little miss still hasn't been able to find a good liege." Hua Xiangyue sent a coquettish glance towards Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang knew he had nothing which could be seen fit by this woman, yet he also remembered previously that this woman truly intended to become his maidservant, but for what reason would she do so? Hua Xiangyue stood up. Standing by the window, her back was facing towards Chen Xiang. She faintly sighed. "Chen Xiang, recently you've created a lot of commotion. That booty is truly marvelous." A voice was suddenly heard. Chen Xiang was startled. As for Hua Xiangyue, she started blush. Plussing red all over her pretty face. She immediately turned her head and shockingly stared at Chen Xiang with her pretty eyes wide open. This voice sounded exactly like Chen Xiang, but it was not spoken by him. Its source was that little mischievous dragoness Long Shui. Chen Xiang gulped and ruthlessly smacked his left chest. He had not expected Long Shui had this sort of ability and could perfectly imitate someone's voice. Chen Xiang really wasn't worried for no reason at all previously. "Did you just say something?" Hua Xiangyue asked with a frown. She was sure that she had not heard wrongly, yet she also felt that Chen Xiang would not say such frivolous words, in spite of the fact that he usually had a nasty expression in his eyes when he looked at her. Chen Xiang had a wry smile on his face. How could he say it was not him? But then again, who would he say spoke? This loss, even if he didn't want to suffer, he still had to own up to it. "I just felt like it, but didn't express well. I meant to say your body is very good," Chen Xiang quickly explained. "Humph, your guts have increased immensely, you even dare to verbally molest me." Hua Xiangyue tenderly spat. In her heart, she was strangely excited. Chen Xiang poured himself a cup of tea. While drinking it, he used his divine sense to warn that naughty little dragoness. "Girl, you are so dead, don't act so unreasonably, that sort of statement nearly gave me a heart attack." "I only said what I felt was true." Long Shui giggled. "Such a beautiful woman should be flirted with. Chen Xiang, you have provoked Elder Dan during your stay in the extreme martial sect. She is very powerful. What are your plans for the future?" Hua Xiangyue asked with a strange expression in her eyes as she looked at Chen Xiang. "What plan do I need? That woman would not dare to go against me now, hey. Chen Xiang, thinking about Elder Dan having to call him martial uncle, made him secretly delighted in his heart. Hua Xiangyue frowned and walked over to Chen Xiang's side. "Why? This is my confidential secret, I can't tell you," Chen Xiang replied. His face was Briming with a triumphant smile. Sister Hua, don't you have high and powerful authority within Danxiang Taoyuan? Chen Xiang was worried about her continual probing and immediately changed the subject. Just simply call me Xiangyue or else I'll ignore you. Hua Xiangyue pressed her jade finger on Chen Xiang's lips, making his mind sway. Xiangyue. Okay. Hua Xiangyue softly laughed. That's good. I just manage some very headache-inducing things in Danxiang Taoyuan. Usually I'm very busy. I specially took some time out just to see you. Xiangyue, why are you so good to me? Chen Xiang curiously asked. He could not think of a reason why he gained this girl's favor. Are you not even confident about your own charm? Hua Xiangyue affectionately and lovingly looked at Chen Xiang, causing his heartbeat to rapidly speed up. Of course not, but in front of you I don't have the confidence. Chen Xiang flung his head. Hua Xiangyue, seeing such appearance from Chen Xiang, softly giggled. She no longer said Chen Xiang, and listened to him talk about the things happened to him during the past few days. He also told her about his experience in the extreme martial sect. They talked late into night. Chen Xiang had just finished with his alchemy, so he was even more tired than usual, but still endured up until now. It's late, I ought to return to my own room. Hua Xiangyue yawned. She stood up, and just as she turned around, she heard Chen Xiang's voice. Stay. Let's sleep together. That naughty Long Shui once again imitated Chen Xiang's voice. Chen Xiang's mouth was twitching because this was not spoken by him, but rather Long Shui. He was once again teased by Long Shui. Suddenly 2 enchanting blush marks emerged on Hua Xiangyue's pretty cheeks. She turned around and lightly smacked Chen Xiang's head, angrily scolded. You little brat! You're getting worse and worse, also you have a fiancé. Long Shui's soft giggles resounded in Chen Xiang's mind. He could not wait to get a hold of her and slap her little ass until it is swollen red for daring to tease him. It was okay right now since it was Hua Xiangyue, but what if this little dragoness acted up when it came to Elder Dan? His good days would come to an end. After thinking so, Chen Xiang could not help but feel chills run down his spine. He now thought he had wrapped himself in a n of trouble by asking this naughty little dragoness to follow him. I meant that you should sleep here on my bed while I cultivate meditating. Chen Xiang explained with a wry smile. Humph, no need. Hua Xiangyue lightly snorted, but in her heart she was very happy. This is because previously she was not able to draw Chen Xiang to Danxiang Taoyuan, even resorting to selling her own body, and allowed Chen Xiang to see all of her, but she was still not successful. Yet now she saw Chen Xiang was regretting his decision, and very much wanted her. She was secretly pleased. Chen Xiang naturally didn't know her thoughts as he watched Hua Xiangyue leave. Then he hastily shut the door, took off his clothes, and started ruthlessly hammering the white dragon tattoo on his body. It hurts, it hurts. Even after hearing Long Shui's tender cries, Chen Xiang continued to beat the mark on his chest. However, it didn't take long before he heard her giggle. Stupid! Your beating doesn't hurt me, you're just hurting yourself. You're truly an idiot, just look at how you're seriously beating yourself, ha ha ha. Little girl, don't challenge my bottom line or else you won't get any dawn to eat from me in the future. Chen Xiang did not say so angrily but rather dismissively. He knew the more angry he sounded the more it would make this little girl happy. No. I was just playing a prank on you. I admit my mistake. Long Shui said in a low voice. Chapter 133 Alchemists, Assessment. Chapter 133 Alchemists, Assessment Regular Chapter for Saturday U.R. Day. We missed one chapter and we have 2 in queue for 3,100 reading lists and 300 vote. Thanks for the support. As long as the situation was not serious, Chen Xiang would not look into In the past he had learned from Su Meiyao, if there were some special circumstances, you could make this little dragoness lend her fearsome strength to yourself, and if he could fuse her strength with his own strength, that would be but very terrifying. Of course, the most Chen Xiang was looking forward to was the fact that Long Shui would teach him the cultivation method of SHI+2. But currently his infant soul was too young, and at least it would have to be 1 to 2 years old. If Chen Xiang let those immortals from the heavenly realm know he had raised a dragon, and he was also complaining about it, he would certainly be scolded to death. He even got the advantage this cheaply and was still not appreciating it. Chen Xiang had successfully refined the White Jade Dan and the True Elemental Dan, so he planned to take the Level 4 Alchemist's assessment tomorrow, and become a Level 4 Alchemist. The next day, Chen Xiang came to know Hua Xiangyue had already left the Danxiang Tower, and returned to Danxiang Taoyuan. If he had something important to say, he could let Mrs. Li know. Chen Xiang suddenly felt Hua Xiangyue was not just a simple maidservant, otherwise Mrs. Li would not be so respectful towards her. Chen Xiang arrived at the location for the assessment registration, and after he arrived he found out about the new improved standards of the alchemist's assessment. Such as, Level 3 alchemists now needed to know how to refine 3 kinds of middle-grade spirit level dawn, and Level 4 alchemists needed to know how to refine 3 kinds of high-grade spirit level dawn. An extra kind of Dan had been added to the previous requirement. Chen Xiang only knew how to refine 2 kinds of high-grade spirit level dawn, and a low-grade profound level Dan, the building foundation Dan. Danxiang Taoyuan's assessments could be considered as very strict. You would only be given 1 set of herbs, and if you fail, you need to pay half the price of the herbs. And if you're successful, the Dan is given to the Danxiang Taoyuan. Chen Xiang found Mrs. Li, and after Mrs. Li came to know Hua Xiangyue and Chen Xiang relations were very good, she became respectful towards Chen Xiang, and this sudden change in attitude made Chen Xiang harder to adapt. Mrs. Li, I want to take part in the Level 4 Alchemists assessment, but I now only know how to refine 2 high-grade spirit level dawn and a low-grade profound level Dan. I don't know whether or not I can also sign up? Chen Xiang asked. What? Mrs. Li suspected she had gotten it wrong, and she looked at Chen Xiang with a surprised look on her face. Chen Xiang was just 20-year-old, and to her surprise he could actually refine 2 high-grade spirit level dawn and a low-grade profound level Dan. It was very hard to believe, and her heart was pounding faster and faster. She began to suspect Chen Xiang was in the true martial realm, and she even guessed the low-grade profound level Dan Chen Xiang knew was the building foundation Dan. The building foundation Dan and high-grade spirit level dawn had the same difficulty, and many alchemists already knew this. Mrs. Li also knew Chen Xiang had purchased a good few amount of building foundation Dan's materials. Is it okay if I replace a high-grade spirit level Dan with low-grade profound level Dan? Currently I don't have much time to learn refining a different kind of high-grade spirit level Dan. I must return to Extreme Martial Sect to partake. 1P8 in Extreme Martial Grand Tournament, said Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang only heard about the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament from Hua Xiangyue last night, and he still had more than 10 days before it started. Extreme Martial Grand Tournament was a compet. 1. Tie-in of alchemy as well as of martial arts. This exchanging martial art grand tournament was held once in a decade, and it was also a big test for all the disciples of the extreme martial sect. Yes, but we currently lack materials like azure profound fruit, as for others there is no problem. Although Mrs. Li was shocked, but there was no change in her expression. I have the azure profound fruit. Chen Xiang also had one, and it was originally left to be used as a seed, but he still had the azure profound tree in the extreme Dan King courtyard, so he didn't need to worry about using it. That's good. The entire process would be supervised by me and 10 level 4 alchemists of Danxiang Tower. Do you agree? Mrs. Li asked. Chen Xiang readily nodded his head, and then followed Mrs. Li for signing up. Finally, he had the extra Dan for the AS assessment. Chen Xiang arrived at the 10th floor, and this floor was specialized for the AS assessment. Chen Xiang saw those 10 level 4 alchemists, and all of them were old men with few white SHI plus NNY hairs. Each of them were highly respected. Mrs. Li had a very high respect for them, because these 10 level 4 alchemists were all most renowned. Besides, they were responsible for supplying a large number of dawn to Danxiang Taoyuan, and all of them were above the true martial realm. Chen Xiang, after seeing them, respectfully gave a salute to all of them. These 10 old men usually were either refining dawn or cultivating, and they rarely came outside. They were not aware of the outside matters, and when they learned that this immature brat in front of them was here for the level 4 alchemists AS assessment, all of them could not help but reveal a contemptuous expression in their eyes. What made them despise him even more was when they came to know Chen Xiang would actually refine 2 high-grade spirit level dawn and a low-grade profound level dan. These old men themselves, for many years, were never able to successfully refine the building foundation dan. They certainly had the materials, but it just took a long time to gather them. Even all of us have not been successful, and this brat wants to refine? He doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, and it is simply a waste of an azure profound fruit. An old man said to another man in a low voice. His voice was full of contempt. When Chen Xiang heard, he just laughed and didn't say anything. He had successfully refined the building foundation dan a good few times. Originally, these old men were all reluctant to waste their time supervising Chen Xiang's AS assessment, but after they heard from Mrs. Li he was Hua Xiangyue's friend, each of them were happy to stay, which made Chen Xiang even more doubtful regarding Hua Xiangyue's status. Hua Xiangyue said she was just one of the many maidservants of the deans, but her ident. Tai was a point higher. Chen Xiang took out the brilliant flame dragon furnace, and gave it to those impatient-looking old men to check. The brilliant flame dragon furnace just looked very beautiful, but it was very difficult to see where it was extraordinary. Chen Xiang already knew the rules of the alchemist's AS assessment, such as Chen Xiang's level 4 test. It was needed to be supervised by 10 level 4 alchemists. Of course, for a high-rank test, only 1 or 2 were simply needed, because high-rank alchemists were harder to find. Chen Xiang started refining a dan. He was refining the true elemental dan, and the herbs were all provided by Danxiang Tower, while their quality was good. Chen Xiang performed very well, and in just half an hour he had successfully refined it. All right, refined a true elemental dan. Chen Xiang slightly exhaled, while wiping the sweat on his face. Those 10 old men looked at each other, and they had a "I don't believe it" look. How was it possible to refine in just half an hour? At least they couldn't. But Mrs. Li was convinced, because she knew Chen Xiang's deeds, and understood all the things Chen Xiang did were earth-shaking. She personally went over, opened the lid of the brilliant flame dragon furnace, and then saw 5 exquisitely carved, glittering white dawn. Mrs. Li took a deep breath with surprise, and though she was not alchemist, she knew ordinarily only 4 true elemental dawn were refined out from 1 set of herbs. And these 10 level 4 alchemists she found, most of them were only able to refine out 3. These 10 old men one by one gathered around, looked at those 5 true elemental dawn with a questioning look. They had suspected Chen Xiang had somehow cheated. But when they took those true elemental dawn in their hands, they were able to feel the dan was still hot, as well as the rich herb fragrance, which was the distinctive features of a dan that was just refined out. Their thin and old bodies could not help but shudder, and they all looked at Chen Xiang with wide-open eyes, as if they had seen a monster. It was very hard for them to believe, A 20-year-old little guy could actually refine the true elemental Dan, moreover 5 from one set of herbs. Chapter 134 Level 4 Alchemist. Chapter 134 Level 4 Alchemist Sunday Regular Chapter. Who is your teacher? An old man, after taking a deep breath, asked. His voice actually sounded very respectful, and he looked at Chen Xiang with a look of admiration. At this time, all of them didn't dare to look down on Chen Xiang, and at the same time, they felt ashamed about their previous behavior. I'm a disciple of the Extreme Dan King Courtyard of the Extreme Martial Sect. I don't have a teacher, but Elder Dan would from time to time guide me. Chen Xiang calmly replied. After hearing his reply, these 10 old men's legs became soft, and they almost knelt from fear. Extreme Dan King Courtyard. Although they had not seen it, its name reverberated like thunder. Simply because it was the residence of the Extreme Martial Sect's Dan King, and only someone authorized by Elder Dan could enter. Although Elder Dan was mysterious, her skill in alchemy was well renowned in the Qinwu mainland. Many alchemists believed Elder Dan had become a Dan King, but she was not. In fact, she was just a step away. Chen Xiang was the only exception who could enter the Extreme Dan King Courtyard. Mrs. Li had already heard that Chen Xiang had also taken in a level 3 alchemist, Yao Haixing, as his apprentice. In Qinwu mainland, only 2 alchemists were the most excellent. One was the dean of Danxiang Taoyuan, and the other was Elder Dan from the Extreme Martial Sect. And both of them were also the most mysterious. Chen Xiang had the support of Elder Dan's guidance, and it could be clearly seen that Chen Xiang must be better than the others, otherwise, he would not be favored by Elder Dan. Chen Xiang was even more faster while refining the White Jade Dan, and also refined a lot of them. It once again gave a heart attack to these old men. They felt very ashamed and were unable to even lift their head due to the fact that they had previously looked down upon Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang rested for a moment, and then started refining the building foundation Dan. 10 level 4 alchemists didn't dare to bat their eyes, looking at Chen Xiang quickly processing the herbs. The familiarity and speed by which he arranged those herbs made them secretly shocked in their hearts. They could see Chen Xiang had refined many times, at least more than them, otherwise, he would not be able to distribute the herbs so evenly. As of now, when those old men looked at Chen Xiang, their expressions were as if they were looking at a grandmaster. After all, that was the building foundation Dan, and not to mention the refining, it was even rarely ever seen because building foundation Dan's material were too little. They very much wanted to know how Chen Xiang could get so many azure profound fruits, and some were even playing with the idea of making Chen Xiang sell a little to them. After the herbs were processed, Chen Xiang, with same familiarity and speed, once again started throwing them in the alchemical furnace, and then he placed them in the alchemical furnace in an orderly manner. All of those old men engraved the whole process in their mind. Chen Xiang closed his eyes, with both hands placed on either side of the burner design of the brilliant flame dragon furnace, and started pouring the flames. Then, using his divine sense, he observed the internal changes of the brilliant flame dragon furnace, as the flames simultaneously started incinerating the herbs in the furnace. In this way, those old men ghastly stared at that brilliant flame dragon furnace. Except the subtle changes in the temperature, they were not able to sense anything else. Even more so, they didn't know the flow of time in the brilliant flame dragon furnace. 1 hour pause, said. Chen Xiang fiercely opened his eyes, and with a smile, he said, "Successful." "What? Successful?" Although those old men saw Chen Xiang stood like a statue, it was not fun to watch, and Chen Xiang was successful. Did he really refine the building foundation Dan? In just a single hour, he had actually refined it. Besides, Chen Xiang looked as if he was making a dumpling, simple and easy. Mrs. Li's eyebrows were also knitted together. She doubtfully went over and opened the lid of the alchemical furnace. She suddenly let out a cry of shock, because she saw 2 building foundation dawn. He had actually refined 2 building foundation Dan. Mrs. Li exclaimed. Generally, it was good if one could refine a building foundation Dan, but Chun Xiang had actually refined 2. This was really scary. Even though Mrs. Li had good accomplishment with her cultivation, she still could not help but forget herself from shock. Those 10 old men were even more shocked, their mouths were wide opened, their teeth almost fell off from shock. This is the building foundation Dan? An old man stuttered. Yes, it is the building foundation Dan, it is the same as what has been described, they have veins like 1,000-vein fruit, golden and azure like metal spirit fruit and azure profound fruit. Another old man exclaimed. They could not describe their feelings, they looked at Chun Xiang with envy and jealousy, their eyes were filled with a look of wars. Hi+P. If Chun Xiang want to receive them as his apprentice, maybe they would immediately kneel. Chun Xiang was now already a level 4 alchemist, however, he was better than them. Because Chun Xiang was able to refine the building foundation Dan. Refining the building foundation Dan not only represented that the divine sense had achieved a certain level, it also represented their true qi had reached a higher level. Those 10 old men and Mrs. Li could not help but feel shocked. If Chun Xiang was now in the true martial realm, then it would simply be abnormal. Chun Xiang got a jade card, there were 4 golden stripes on the jade card, and on the jade card's back there were also 10 signatures carved using blood and divine sense aside from his name. Those were the signatures of the people who supervised Chun Xiang's assessment. Out of 2 building foundation Dan he had refined, Chun Xiang only acquired 1. But Mrs. Li still felt a little sorry for him, so she decided to give Chun Xiang 100,000 crystal stones. If Chun Xiang didn't have the azure profound fruit, they would never be able to witness the refinement of building foundation Dan. Chun Xiang, how about I send some true martial realm escorts with you to the extreme martial sect? It might be dangerous on the way. Mrs. Li said. Mrs. Li, thank you for your kind considerations, but it's not needed. Chun Xiang slightly smiled. Because of Gu Dongchen's previous statement, if anyone powerful than Chun Xiang tried to grab him, then the extreme martial sect's elder courtyard would take action, and no one would dare to take that risk. Even the Nirvana realm martial artists didn't dare to do so. Chun Xiang left Fragrant City, released the vermilion bird fire wings, and flew towards the extreme martial province. In order to ensure Chun Xiang's safety, Mrs. Li and those 10 level 4 alchemists didn't spread things about Chun Xiang, and they also maintained secrecy about Chun Xiang. At this time, any extreme martial sect's disciple who was out or arranged in a distant place had already returned to the extreme martial sect, in order to partake 1P8 in the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament, which was held once in a decade. It was the time to reveal how much their own strength had elevated, and at the same time, it was also the time to witness the birth of the new generation's most outstanding disciple of the extreme martial sect. Chun Xiang, while flying in the air, was very relaxed and casual. This was exactly the benefit of true Qi wings. Brother Chun, give me that building foundation Dan to try. Long Shui tenderly said. After Chun Xiang left Fragrant City, Long Shui never stopped asking, using all kinds of lovely and sweet words as she tried to cheat Chun Xiang into giving the building foundation Dan to her. No, I also am in need of it. Wait for me to collect the herbs again, then I'll refine them for you. Chun Xiang flatly refused. Just let me taste it a little. I'll only lick. Long Shui once again muttered pathetically, her voice was very likable, but Chun Xiang still rejected her. If she got it in her mouth, that was like hitting a dog with a meat bun, which would never return. TLN. Hit a dog with a meat bun, using the wrong method to approach a problem. This little greedy dragon was not so easy to keep, besides, she loved to eat dawn, the more high-grade it was the more she loved to eat it. This made Chun Xiang's heart bleed. Flying high in the air, Chun Xiang suddenly heard a sound from below. When he looked down, he saw a group of people were surrounding a white-robed girl. At this time, he was already at the border of Danxiang Taoyuan and the extreme martial province. It was also a very chaotic area. Wu Qianqian. How could she be here? Chen Xiang immediately dove downwards. Wu Qianqian was originally an arrogant girl, but after fighting with Chen Xiang, she became aware of her own faults, and turned over a new leaf, which led to her improved impression on Chen Xiang. A person making a mistake was normal, but if one was unable to realize their own mistakes and obsessions, then this person would end up getting destroyed from their own mistake. Chapter 135 Blue Star Fire Spirit. Chapter 135 Blue Star Fire Spirit. Wu Qianqian's arms were fully covered in blood, and ABLOODY sword slash stained her beautiful cheeks. The level 3 spirit weapon in her hands had already been chopped into two. She was surrounded by 20 or so men, but she had a resolute look on her face. It was evidently clear she was not planning to retreat. She looked calm even though she was facing death. She knew her situation was already hopeless. Girl, obediently give us the treasure, and we will spare your life, a handsome man coldly said. Although Wu Qianqian was beautiful, he was more or less concerned about the thing in Wu Qianqian's hand. Even in death, you will not get it. A blue bead suddenly appeared in Wu Qianqian's hand. She opened her mouth and quickly swallowed the bead. You dare to eat this treasure? That handsome man angrily roared and rushed over. After Wu Qianqian swallowed the blue bead, she felt an excruciating pain coursing all over her body, but she clenched her teeth and endured the pain. But as a result, she was now devoid of strength. Just as that handsome man's sword was about to stab her, a scalding heat engulfed the group. A ball of flames fell from the sky, fiercely plusing onto that handsome man's body, making him issue a blood-curdling scream. Wu Qianqian only saw a tall silhouette appear in front of her, and on the back of this tall silhouette, there was a pair of huge wings fully composed of flames. Chen Xiang. Wu Qianqian remembered that Chen Xiang had huge fire wings exactly like those in front of her. She didn't know why, but when she saw Chen Xiang appear in front of her, Wu Qianqian felt she was now safe. She slumped on the ground while enduring the stabbing pain. She strugglingly said, "Thank you for rescuing me." Chen Xiang's huge fire wings were already very famous, and to his surprise, Wu Qianqian's attackers actually recognized him. Haha, so it's Chen Xiang who has a bounty of 300,000 crystal stones. A man laughed and said. However, his laughter quickly disappeared, because he saw Chen Xiang was stepping on the handsome man's head, and it was already buried deep into the ground. Chen Xiang had actually trampled the handsome man to death. They are true martial sect disciples. I accidentally obtained an orb, but when they saw it, they wanted to rob me. They have been hunting me for the last 10 days, Wu Qianqian said while clenching her teeth. At this very moment, she was experiencing unimaginable pain. Chen Xiang coldly snorted, "True martial sect's disciples, you're truly good. You actually dare to blatantly bully my extreme martial sect's disciple. Chen Xiang, do you also want to make the true martial sect list you as a wanted man?" That man gloomily said. "Everyone is welcome to come at me," Chen Xiang loudly shouted, accompanied by an invisible true qi spewing from his mouth, which struck that man's body. Soon, that man spouted a mouthful of blood as an explosion rang inside his body along with the sound of breaking bones. In blink of an eye, he was killed. Those true martial sect's disciples were astonished, their faces were filled with shock. Just by speaking, Chen Xiang could instantly kill one of them. In the end, just how strong was Chen Xiang? "Go back and tell Liao Xiaoyun to not die quickly, I'll kill him with my own hands," Chen Xiang said in an imposing manner. An invisible pressure suddenly enveloped those true martial sect's disciples, making all of them kneel and vomit blood. Their faces contorted in pain, some even fell unconscious. "Humph!" Chen Xiang coldly snorted. Soon, all of those disciples spewed a mouthful of blood at the same time, before the invisible pressure immediately disappeared. Actually, Chen Xiang had not wanted to kill them. Otherwise all of them would have been dead long ago. Right now, Chen Xiang was already at the first level of the true martial realm. Mortal martial realm martial artists were just like ants in front of him. As long as he wished to, he could make them turn into a puff of smoke in the blink of an eye. Wu Qianqian, who was behind Chen Xiang, saw everything clearly. Regarding Chen Xiang's strength, she too was very surprised, even though it was not the first time she saw Chen Xiang taking action. Seeing him safely returned, she secretly sighed in relief within her heart. She had been worried about Chen Xiang. Chen Xiang turned around and hugged Wu Qianqian, and then released his vermilion bird fire wings. In the blink of an eye, the pair flew away. Those true martial sect's disciples all let out a sigh of relief. Just a moment ago, they felt that their death was imminent. Even if they hated Chen Xiang in their hearts, they could not help but admire Chen Xiang's strength. In front of Chen Xiang, they were nothing more than ants. While holding Wu Qianqian's tender body, Chen Xiang felt her soft body trembling, and her body temperature was extremely hot. He could see that Wu Qianqian was in a lot of pain. "What did you eat?" Chen Xiang landed on a mountain peak, held Wu Qianqian's wrist, and probed the situation within her body. He was unexpectedly surprised to see a group of blue flames appearing in her body. These flames were emanating scalding hot qi waves one after another, as if they were trying to refine Wu Qianqian's true qi and meridians. "I also don't know. To put it simply, this O.B. contained a huge amount of fire spirit qi," Wu Qianqian said while grinding her teeth. Even though she was suffering from intense pain, she didn't cry at all. She didn't want to appear weak in front of this man. Wu Qianqian appeared to be in huge amount of pain, and Chen Xiang was also at his wit's end. Yes, blur star fire spirit. When 72 blue stars fell on the mortal world from the sky, all of them became fire spirit. This is one of those stars fire, and was bred inside a blue-colored plant. Long Shui said. It was evident that she too was surprised from her voice. Fire spirit. It was actually a fire spirit. This was the stuff of the legends. Even immortals would be captivated upon hearing its name, yet it had actually ended up within Wu Qianqian's possession. Su Meiyao and Bai Yuyu were also very surprised. They had not antic 1p. aided that after Elder Dan, they would once again see yet another individual possessing a fire spirit. If an alchemist had a fire spirit, it would be very handy for them to refine dawn with. It was a sacred object in the eyes of all alchemists. "Hold on, you must fuse with this thing." As Chen Xiang held Wu Qianqian in his arms, he gently encouraged her. Wu Qianqian nodded. She had no idea where she got the strength to operate her cultivation method, but her dantian responded as it continuously burst forth with compressed true qi. Inconceivable pain tormented Wu Qianqian. For her, the pain she was experiencing was worse than death. She leaned against Chen Xiang's chest, with both of her hands embracing Chen Xiang's waist. Her nails unconsciously scratched Chen Xiang's back because of the pain. Round after round of blood stains started appearing on his back, and although Chen Xiang was in some pain, he was silent, his one hand gently stroking Wu Qianqian's back. No, her internal strength heart law is too low-leveled. She is unable to quickly suppress the blue star fire spirit using a large amount of spirit qi. Quickly teach her the vermilion bird divine exercise. Her comprehension should not be too bad, otherwise she would be unable to reach this level just by using such a low-level internal strength heart law. Su Meiyao said. She also wanted to take a look at how someone would fuse with a fire spirit. Chen Xiang slowly read out aloud some mnemonic. After he finished reading each paragraph, he would then explain it to Wu Qianqian. While Wu Qianqian was enduring the pain, she carefully listened and was very grateful in her heart. She knew that Chen Xiang had imparted a very extraordinary martial exercise. She operated her true qi according to the mnemonics, and gradually, The pain tormenting her body faded away. 3 days passed. Wu Qianqian slowly opened her eyes. She realized that she was lying in a warm embrace, and her pretty face could not help but blush. However, Chen Xiang just looked at her with a gentle smile. Congratulations! You've become a true martial realm martial artist. Wu Qianqian was surprised and quickly left Chen Xiang's embrace. At this time, she indeed felt very rich true qi within her body, and her true qi was pure blue in color, as well as 2 vermilion bird-like beast forms in her dantian. Thank you. Wu Qianqian bowed and said. At this moment, this was the only way she could show her gratitude. She truly didn't know how to pay back Chen Xiang for how much he has helped her. At this time, she saw her nails stained with blood, and she suddenly remembered how she was scratching Chen Xiang's back while enduring the pain that was tormenting her body. Are you okay? Let me take a look. Wu Qianqian hastily said. Her beautiful face was filled with guilt. Chapter 136 Return. Chapter 136 Return. After seeing the scratch marks on Chen Xiang's back, Wu Qianqian felt very guilty before meekly saying, I'm sorry, let me help you with this. Chen Xiang slightly smiled. No need, it's only minor injuries. Although he said so, Wu Qianqian made him lie down before taking out a very cool liquid. She applied the cool liquid on the scratch marks on his back. Chen Xiang felt very comfortable as her beautiful hands lightly rubbed his back. Wu girl, do you know what you just fused with? Chen Xiang asked. Wu Qianqian's face was currently hot and red since it was the first time she had such an intimate contact with a man. Not to mention the fact that she held very good feelings towards this specific male. She softly said, I do not know. Young Master Chen is well informed, you should know. Young Master Chen, from now on simply call me Qianqian. Chen Xiang had a mischievous smile hanging on his face. I remember when you first saw me, at that time, your imposing manner was very good. Now you are like a little girl. From now on, you should simply call me Chen Xiang. What's with this young master nonsense? Wu Qianqian let out an N. Her pretty face had a tinge of red as she spoke. Chen Xiang, I was like a frog in a well who didn't know her own insignificance, and because of my talent, I was proud and arrogant. But fighting with you made me realize my own mistakes, and if not for that, I may have failed to realize my own wrongdoings. I would have made even more mistakes and led myself on the wrong path of cultivation. Honestly, since my last contest with you, my state of mind has elevated a lot, allowing me to break through my bottleneck. Chen Xiang smiled. You didn't just break through a little bit, you are now a very young true martial realm martial artist. That's right, how old are you anyway? At this point, Wu Qianqian was no longer formal with Chen Xiang, because she knew this man was very amiable. As long as you would respect him, he would also respect you, and he was also very straightforward. She stuck her tongue out, chuckled, and spoke. Don't you know it is rude to ask a girl's age? But I can tell you, I'm 28 this year. Ah. Ha ha ha, elder sister. Chen Xiang laughed and said, Chen Xiang would absolutely not refuse if he could be together with a beauty, not to mention the most beautiful girl in the extreme martial sect. Since the fight with Chen Xiang, Wu Qianqian was no longer confident. But now that she had entered the true martial realm, her confidence had once again reached its peak. However, she was no longer proud and arrogant, now she was even more beautiful, more matured, and had a better temperament. Chen Xiang, do you know what I have just fused with? Wu Qianqian lightly smiled as she continued to stroke the scratch marks on Chen Xiang's back. Those scratch marks soon became a lot lighter. It is called the Blue Star Fire Spirit, a special and rare martial spirit. In other words, with this thing, you can release a strange flame. This type of flame originated from the fire seed, and is very beneficial for alchemy. Chen Xiang replied. He had a look of envy on his face as he continued, This thing is very formidable. In fact, one of the reasons why Elder Dan has such high achievements in alchemy is because of her fire spirit. Wu Qianqian had also heard about martial spirits, but it was the first time she had ever heard of a fire spirit. When she discovered that she got such an extremely rare treasure, she was very excited in her heart. Of course, she knew that if Chen Xiang was not here, she would have probably already been destroyed by the blue star fire spirit. Chen Xiang, I can also refine Dawn. I just got back from Fragrant City and am now an official level 2 alchemist. I hope you could give me 1 or 2 pointers. Wu Qianqian calmed down the excitement in her heart and revealed a charming smile. Chen Xiang smiled and nodded his head. I certainly would. You are even more beautiful compared to the first time I met you. Sometimes, real beauty does not necessarily rely on a beautiful face. Sometimes, it's all about how beautiful the heart is. Wu Qianqian blushed, lowered her head and whispered, Thank you for your guidance. The scratch marks on Chen Xiang's back had already disappeared. He knew that this was because of the healing potion Wu Qianqian refined herself. Its effect were pretty good. Whoops, the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament starts in 8 days. We don't have enough time. Wu Qianqian suddenly exclaimed. Why would you be afraid of such a thing? Chen Xiang's laughter resounded before a pair of fire wings suddenly sprouted on his back. Wu Qianqian shyly lowered her head. She knew that she would once again have a close contact with Chen Xiang for quite a while, but she was also secretly looking forward to it. Chen Xiang hugged Wu Qianqian, spread his wings and soared. In the next moment, he was already flying high above the clouds. Wu Qianqian's beautiful face became pale from fear, but she quickly adapted. Qianqian, not in a million years should you ever pass the exercise I gave you on to others. I trusted you when I said on this martial exercise, do not let me down. Chen Xiang said with a serious expression. I promise I'll never spread it to anyone. Wu Qianqian nodded her head before closely wrapped her arms around Chen Xiang's robust waist. Chen Xiang also used one hand to embrace her tender and pretty waist. Both of their actions were very ambiguous. It only took 3 days for Chen Xiang and Wu Qianqian to reach Tianmen City. It was currently very lively. In these past 3 days, Wu Qianqian had been embracing Chen Xiang as he flew. Remembering that feeling, she secretly felt warmth inside her heart. She also felt it was very romantic. Qianqian, you don't have a teacher, right? I'll introduce to Elder Dan, she seems to be missing an apprentice. Chen Xiang cheerfully said. Wu Qianqian was somewhat surprised after hearing this because, according to the rumors, Elder Dan could not wait to kill Chen Xiang. But apparently it seemed that Chen Xiang and Elder Dan's relations, Hi+P, was quite good. The past few days, Chen Xiang had also learned many things about Wu Qianqian. He had not expected Wu Qianqian to come from a plain mortal family. But as she was inherently talented, she was recruited into the Peerless Martial Sect. There, she mingled with various rich and powerful disciples, and over time, she found herself becoming a part of the group. However, whatever she had accomplished today was all achieved advancing step by step as she transformed herself into a genius-level figure. Wu Qianqian happily nodded her head. If she could have Elder Dan as her teacher, that was indeed something worth rejoicing for. However, Elder Dan had always been elusive. She had been in closed-door training for almost 3 years. When they arrived inside the Extreme Martial Sect, Chen Xiang and Wu Qianqian looked like an attractive couple, which was very conspicuous as they walked on the road. Many people knew about Wu Qianqian. After all, she was recognized as the number 1 of the top 10 beauties of the Extreme Martial Sect. As for Chen Xiang, he was also recognized by a lot of people. He was not only famous in the Extreme Martial Sect, he was even famous in the entire Chenwu mainland because of the 300,000 bounty on his head. Chen Xiang arrived with Wu Qianqian at the 16th Martial Courtyard, and just like before, it was still deserted. That day when Wu Qianqian and Chen Xiang had a martial contest here, it was still the 500th Martial Courtyard, Who would have thought it would suddenly be at the forefront of all the inner martial courtyard? Qianqian, you go and find Elder Wu to make arrangement for you. After all, you are now in the true martial realm. This first inner martial courtyard in your eyes is just floating clouds. Chen Xiang spoke with a smile on his face. Wu Qianqian should have the qualms to be proud of herself. She hadn't even reached 30 years old, but had already entered the true martial realm, not to mention the fact that she had also acquired a fire spirit. But Wu Qianqian, after coming into contact with Chen Xiang, had already changed a lot. So it was no surprise that she just replied, "Isn't it possible for me to be with you in the same martial courtyard in the future? Although I'm in true martial realm, I feel that I can learn many things with you. At least now, because of you, I have changed a lot." Chen Xiang, after some thought, said with some difficulty, "I worry my fiancé would get jealous." He missed Xue Xianxian very much. After the extreme martial grand tournament, he felt he should go and find Xue Xianxian. Wu Qianqian was shocked in her heart. She bit her lips, evidently lost and pained in her eyes. "You have a fiancé? Is she also a disciple of the extreme martial sect?" Chen Xiang smiled and said, "No, she and I were betrothed in the secular world. She is called Xue Xianxian. She is in Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire." It turned out to be Xue Xianxian. Wu Qianqian was shocked. She understood why Chen Xiang was never interested in the beautiful girls within the extreme martial sect. He already had a fiancée. He certainly didn't need to bother with any other woman. Wu Qianqian lowered her head. She felt extremely sad. "Your chest is very big. Holding you felt great." At this time, Long Xue imitated Chen Xiang's voice and responded, which then made both Chen Xiang and Wu Qianqian petrified. Chapter 137 Martial Nephew. Chapter 137 Martial Nephew TLN. I have changed Extreme Martial Grand Meeting to Extreme Martial Grand Tournament. Corresponding changes have already been made in previous chapter. If I missed it, please do point it out. Wu Qianqian's pretty face turned very red. She had not expected Chen Xiang to say such frivolous things so lightly, but in her heart she was secretly elated. After all, Chen Xiang had praised her, and she knew Chen Xiang was attracted to her. Chen Xiang wanted to release his anger, but he refrained himself and explained instead, "I meant to say, your body is very nice." N. Wu Qianqian nodded her head, then distractedly left. Chen Xiang, after getting sure she had left the martial courtyard, used all his force and smacked his own chest as he angrily said, "Little dragon, you better not appear in front of me, or else I will spank you till your little S is swollen." Long Xue with a light snort replied, "You first captured her heart and then was so ruthless towards her, this dragon could not bear it. Let's talk in the future." Chen Xiang slightly sighed. Obviously, he could see Wu Qianqian was interested in him. Chen Xiang like always waited for Yun Xiaodao and Zhu Rong in the 16th martial courtyard. However, instead of his two good friends, that old baldy Wu Kaming was the one who came. Hey, my nephew little Baldy, you are truly good. You knew I came back, you even personally paid a visit." Chen Xiang smiled and said, taking advantage of this peerless martial artist made him feel superior. "Young B.A.S.T.A.R.D. Martial uncle, you did not die. I'm truly unhappy. Don't you know you made us worried for nothing for so long?" Wu Kaming sighed bitterly. He could not wait to spank Chen Xiang. "And little Featherhead?" Chen Xiang smiled mischievously and asked. "Dean is arranging things for Wu Qianqian. I did not expect she would go out on a trip and actually break through her bottleneck and become a true martial realm martial artist at such a young age. Our Dean and the peerless martial sect's Dean are both discussing how to reward her." Wu Kaming replied, seeing Chen Xiang was safely back. He felt much better. He also learned Chen Xiang had saved Wu Qianqian and allowed her to smoothly break through. "Are you waiting for that little fatty and skinny boy?" "You don't need to wait. I don't know where they acquired the building foundation, Dan, but both of them had already entered closed-door training. I fear that they will only come out once the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament begins, Wu Keiming said. Both Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao had actually eaten building foundation dawn, and it was still unclear from where they got it. What happened? Chen Xiang asked in surprise. According to what Yun Xiaodao said, it is very likely that they got it from a guy called Squinted Dragon, Wu Keiming replied. Chen Xiang nodded his head. He was of course happy for his friends. Did Elder Dan come out from her seclusion? Chen Xiang asked once again. She came out. She is currently in the Extreme Dan King courtyard. Both I and Dean hadn't told her the majority of things, especially the fact that you are our martial uncle. This is something you should explain yourself. Wu Keiming fraudulently smiled. Chen Xiang stood at the entrance of Extreme Dan King courtyard, inserted the jade card in a hole, then the gate opened. Just as Chen Xiang stepped into the entrance, a silhouette wearing black robe and a mask, with fiery light in both eyes, suddenly appeared in front of him. This sudden appearance made Chen Xiang jump back in fear. Elder Dan, you scared me to death. Chen Xiang exhaled a long breath. You're not dead. Where did you get that tree from? Elder Dan asked. Anxiousness could easily be detected in her voice. Chen Xiang had planted an azure profound tree in the courtyard, and he couldn't simply hide it from Elder Dan, he replied. I found it deep in the mountains. Why? That is the azure profound tree. Every day it absorbs a large amount of true qi, while bearing the azure profound fruit in the process. Furthermore, the speed by which it bears fruit is too fast. Now the flowers had already blossomed. Elder Dan's voice was full of excitement. Chen Xiang was also surprised. He thought that under normal circumstances, it would take 1 to 2,000 years for it to bear some fruit. But he had only left for 8 months and the flowers had already bloomed. With such a speed, he would be able to get fruits every year. This was simply similar to harvesting ordinary fruits. I'll go and take a look. Chen Xiang quickly ran over. When he saw 20 flowers blooming on the trees, he suddenly let out a loud laughter. Ha ha, father would become the richest person. Elder Dan smacked Chen Xiang's head and coldly spoke. Do not be proud, it still hasn't bore the fruits. Anyway, where and for what have you gone all these days? Although I hate you, you're still a member of Extreme Dan King Courtyard. I'll not allow you to have slightest mishap. You better accept me as your teacher. I can pass you remarkable divine martial techniques. I can also refine building foundation Dan for you and help you break through. Chen Xiang, using his pinky finger, scratched his ear and mischievously said, Nameless little girl, you should be aware that I have killed a true martial realm martial artist of beast martial sect, right? Then you should also know I was imprisoned in the Forbidden Land. Yes, only that insane old man would use this name. Is it you? Elder Dan was not stupid. After thinking it through, her tender body slightly shuddered. Chen Xiang looked up and loudly laughed before taking out a contract, then he handed it over to Elder Dan. His laughter was just like that insane old man. This is proof of my apprentices. Hi+P, although teacher is maniac, he is a nice person. He taught me a lot of things. Otherwise I would have already been dead in Fragrant City. Chen Xiang proudly said. Elder Dan's beautiful hands were trembling. She gradually opened the master and apprentice contract. She could clearly sense Huang Jitian's peculiar true qi breath. Dan Elder let out a deep long sigh and slowly said, Does Dean and Elder Wu know about this? Of course they know, they both call me Martial Uncle. It doesn't matter if you don't call me that way, because I know you hate me and I also don't want to force you. Chen Xiang said as he pretended to sigh, before putting away the master and apprentice contract. Elder Dan lightly snorted as she stood there, speechless. Her teacher was very good towards her, and Huang Jitian was also the same. If not for these two people's strength, she would probably not be alive today. She held both of them in very high regards and was very respectful towards them, but as for Chen Xiang, Martial Uncle, Elder Dan also called him so, but way she spoke was very stiff, not to mention her voice was also full of hatred. Hey, Little Bald and Little Featherhead both call me young Marshal uncle, you can also call me so. Chen Xiang laughed, he was even more proud, all of his teeth were clearly visible as if they could fall off at any moment. Elder Dan coldly snorted, now any idea of taking Chen Xiang as her apprentice had already ceased to exist, taking her own martial uncle as her apprentice, it was simply a joke. When others are present we will act like usual, but if there is no one, you have to respect me. Chen Xiang's complexion became serious, you have keep this thing secret, you can't let anyone know otherwise I would be in big trouble. I'm not an idiot, you don't have to teach me this point. Besides, you are now very annoying. Elder Dan coldly said. Chen Xiang laughed and said, Elder Dan, Wu Qianqian have just advanced to true martial realm, and she has fused with the fire spirit just before advancing. I personally witnessed the whole process, she is a girl and also her talent is not bad. Furthermore, she is now a level 2 alchemist, it would be good if you take her as your disciple. Chapter 138 Fis.H.I plus ing up a fortune. Chapter 138 Fis.H.I plus ing up a fortune. This chapter was sponsored by Joshua Lee Fire Spirit. Once Elder Dan heard these two words, she could not help but be startled. Regarding this matter, she was very shocked. Are you telling the truth? Elder Dan was still in disbelief over what Chen Xiang had previously said. If you don't believe me, you should go and take a look. Chen Xiang said with a small smile hanging on his face. I do not intend to take any apprentices, but I could instruct her and look after her like she was my own apprentice. There are not many who know the usage of the fire spirit even in the whole Chenwu mainland. Elder Dan proudly said. She guessed. Chen Xiang had already been told by that insane old man, Huang Jitian, that she was in possession of a purple moon fire spirit. Chen Xiang grinned and said, Elder Dan, now that you are my martial niece, if I win against you will you still become my woman? Elder Dan was stunned for a moment, before she instantly retorted, Of course. This matter has nothing to do with that one. At this time, she truly began to worry that Chen Xiang could beat her, because she knew that insane old man would never causally take an apprentice. I hope you're not ugly. Chen Xiang licked his lips, his smile was very dubious. I have already said, I'm absolutely not uglier than Xue Xianxian. You don't need to doubt my appearance. Elder Dan furiously retorted. Hey, empty words. Remove your mask then, let me have a look. Regarding Elder Dan, Chen Xiang was getting more and more curious, because he always felt Elder Dan was very familiar. Besides, she also intentionally altered her voice and hid her face. Elder Dan coldly snorted before leaving the Extreme Dan King courtyard. Little dragon, were you able to see through this woman? Chen Xiang asked. He knew that Long Shui had some unusual abilities. Not really, this woman is truly very mysterious. Her whole body is cluttered with purple moon fire qi, tightly covering every inch of her. Said Long Shui. Chen Xiang, quickly use the dragon's saliva thing to grow this fruit. I want to eat it. Eat S-H-I plus T. Only with alchemy can one unleash its full potential. I just wanted to try this thing. Long Shui muttered. Chen Xiang revealed a sliver of a smile as he looked at his azure profound tree before he left the Extreme Dan courtyard. He left in order to sign up for various events in the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament. One was the Alchemy Compet. One tie-in while another was the Martial Contest. He also signed up for the Speed Contests. Chen Xiang wanted to win in all of them. The winner of each contest would get 100 true elemental dawn and 100,000 crystal stones, and if one got first place in all three compet. One tie-in, they would get 300 true elemental dawn and 300,000 crystal stones. Chen Xiang tightly clenched his fists. Besides, he also had to support this greedy little dragon. He had to work even harder to earn more crystal stones to buy the herbs for alchemy. After being completely missing for 8 months, Chen Xiang had finally returned to the extreme martial sect, which caused quite a ruckus in the extreme martial sect. Not to mention the fact that almost everyone wanted his head. In fact, even some of the extreme martial sect's own disciples were entertaining the idea of taking Chen Xiang's head. After all, 300,000 crystal stones was enough for them to buy a lot of true elemental dawn. With that many true elemental dawn, they could have their cultivation advance by leaps and bounds. This type of temptation was pretty hard to resist. However, the extreme martial sect had shown a firm stance on this matter. If any disciples were found out plotting against Chen Xiang, they would be beheaded. Secretly, though, there were a lot of people who had decided if they encountered Chen Xiang in the wilderness they would attack him. Along with Chen Xiang, there was another piece of news that shook the extreme martial sect. Wu Qianqian had advanced to the true martial realm. This news broke the heart of many disciples because now that Wu Qianqian was in the true martial realm, she would absolutely never pay any attention to them. Furthermore, many female disciples broke into fierce jealousy after hearing the news. If the extreme martial sect had something like a young powerful experts list, then Wu Qianqian would definitely be ranked first. However, this was only because Chen Xiang was hiding the fact that his cultivation had reached the true martial realm from everyone. This was because he wanted to make a fortune in the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament, but if it were to be known he had reached the true martial realm, he would definitely be kicked out by Gu Dongchen and Wu Keiming. Chen Xiang soon returned to the Extreme Dan King courtyard, but he saw that Wu Qianqian was also here talking with Elder Dan. He had not expected Elder Dan to actually make another exception and once again allow someone to enter the Extreme Dan courtyard. When Wu Qianqian saw Chen Xiang, she could not help but lower her head, yet her expression gave away her depressed mood. Elder Dan could be considered quite old, and she had her fair share of experience. Obviously, she could see something was wrong. Chen Xiang, what did you do to her? Elder Dan's voice was extremely cold when she asked. It was also filled with slaughter chi. At that moment, Chen Xiang clearly understood why Elder Dan allowed Wu Qianqian to enter the Extreme Dan courtyard. After all, Chen Xiang proposed that she would not have to respect his seniority and call him martial uncle if an outsider was present. Old ginger is still hotter than younger ginger. Chen Xiang lamented in his heart. Wu Qianqian rushed to Chen Xiang's defense. He did nothing, it's just I. Why are you not quickly leaving? I'm instructing her in alchemy. Elder Dan scolded. Chen Xiang hastily ran away as he cursed in a low voice. Chen Xiang arrived in the courtyard of the Azure Profound Tree. He secretly poured the dragon saliva. He wanted to quickly grow the Azure Profound fruit. With them, he could refine many building foundation dawn. A few days passed as the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament drew closer. In these last few days, Chen Xiang found out that Elder Dan was actually really gentle towards Wu Qianqian. Elder Dan patiently instructed Wu Qianqian in the ways of alchemy and also gifted her many herbs. When Chen Xiang learned that Wu Qianqian became a level 2 alchemist even with a lack of resources, he could not help but admire her. He believed that Wu Qianqian, with the blue start fire spirit, would definitely become an outstanding alchemistress. Chen Xiang had just come out of the mysterious realm before he learned another piece of Estoni's HI+ing information. Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and Su Weilong, all three of them had simultaneously advanced into the true martial realm. They were also currently meeting with the dean. Truly 3 idiots. Still, the advantage is occupied by me. Chen Xiang snickered in his heart. He suspected these 3 must have gotten their hands on a large number of building foundation dawn. As long as there were no true marital realm disciples partic. 1p. Aiding in the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament, Chen Xiang was completely confident he would be able to win all 3 compet. 1. Tie-in and get the 300,000 crystal stone prizes, as well as the 300 true elemental dawn. This was not a small sum at all, as a true elemental Dan was worth 5,000 crystal stones. That would mean 300 of them would be an additional 5 million crystal stones. His mother's father will make it big, Chen Xiang shouted in his heart. He was suddenly full of excitement and came to first inner courtyard. Just as he walked in, he saw Dean Wu lying on his chair while Zhu Rong's disgusting laughter was reverberating throughout the entire marital courtyard. Chen Xiang already knew that Zhu Rong had become a true martial realm martial artist, and there was no doubt that he would have gotten some generous incentives for become a true disciple of the extreme martial sect. Younger brother Chen, you are not dead. Zhu Rong, after seeing Chen Xiang for the first time in a while, actually responded like this. Chen Xiang said with a light snort, "Why does everyone keep asking me the same question? Is it better off for me to be dead?" Yun Xiaodao laughed. "Elder brother Chen, we are blessed. Lao Zhu just invited us out to eat. Are you prepared to make him poor?" Su Weilong also lightly laughed. "I'm already prepared. Chen Xiang, you have truly made others worried in these past few months. It's good that you're back, however we cannot partake 1p8 in the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament with you." Chen Xiang laughed and said, "So much better, I've signed up in all 3 compet 1 tie-ins and I will be first, hey hey." Regarding monetary and mathematical matters, Zhu Rong was the most calculating of them all. In his mind there suddenly emerged a giant value. He exclaimed, "If you get first in all of them, won't you earn a lot?" Both Yun Xiaodao and Su Weilong suddenly realized this fact, and they could not help but get shocked. After becoming true disciples, each of us only got 100 true elemental dawn, 50,000 crystal stones, and a used level 3 spirit weapon. Well, at least now we can get 100 true elemental dan and 100,000 crystal stones every year. However, we can't partake 1p8 in the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament now," Zhu Rong sadly said. He suddenly felt he should have hid his own strength and also partake 1p8 in the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament. TLN. I was working on bonus chapters as well as the missed chapters, but I partied with my friends and now dead drunk could only translate these 2 chapters. Maybe you will get the bonus chapters tomorrow. Thank you for your patience. Chapter 139 Race. Chapter 139 Race, TLN. Last night, while I was translating, I made a mistake. The price of true elemental dan I mentioned was 500 crystal stones, but actually, it was 5,000, and Chen Xiang would get 5 million crystal stones instead of 150,000 crystal stones. We are now the disciples of the 15th Martial Courtyard. We're a step higher than elder brother Chen. Yun Xiaodao was still somewhat regretting in his heart, but he was now very proud. He had accomplished his target, to transcend Chen Xiang. "How did you get so many building foundation dawn?" Chen Xiang curiously asked. "I found them when Lao Zhu took me to the place where I found the true elemental dan last time. We have been searching there for 3 months and finally, we found a box of building foundation dawn. In the box there were 8 of them. Each of us got 2 building foundation dawn, we also left 2 of them for you." Su Weilong casually mentioned. They actually found them. Chen Xiang in his heart was wondering. Su Weilong's luck was extremely good. But if they didn't have Zhu Rong pestering them relentlessly, all 3 would have not been able to dig and search a place for 3 months. Zhu Rong had a smug smile on his face as he said, "I'm rather loyal, take them. 600,000 crystal stones, that is the lowest possible price." "Humph, I'm bankrupt, I paid him 700,000 crystal stones." Yun Xiaodao cursed in low voice. "No way, you got these mainly because of me, you all have to recognize this fact." Zhu Rong shook his head and smiled. Chen Xiang had also previously thought that both Zhu Rong and Su Weilong were very loyal, but he had not expected them to ask for money. With a scoff, he said, "I have all the materials for building foundation dan, Elder Dan also promised to help me refine. Su Lao, let's take them for auctioning." Zhu Rong pursed his lips, and quickly took away the 2 building foundation dan. Qin Xiang laughed and said, "When did I say I don't want them? But currently, I don't have the money. Wait for me to get those true elemental dan, I'll pay then." If they auction them, they would get a much higher price. Qin Xiang could also make a profit from them, because he was now already in the true martial realm. He no longer needed the building foundation dan. Zhu Rong also knew that if he could auction them, then he would get even more crystal stones. However, Qin Xiang was his friend, so he had to reluctantly give them to Qin Xiang. Not to mention they thought Qin Xiang had still not entered the true martial realm. Zhu Rong was now overflowing with wealth. His face was filled with the brilliance of success, a reason why Qin Xiang and the group could drink and eat lasciviously in the hotel for a day and night. All the good dishes and wine in the hotel were ordered over and over. They ate and drank until they got tired. At the time of payment, Zhu Rong's face was filled with sorrow, complaining incessantly. He had already expected Yun Xiaodao and others would ruthlessly slaughter him, but he had not expected that they would be so ruthless to the point where he didn't wish to live anymore. The Extreme Martial Grand Tournament was a grand tourney for everyone below the true martial realm. As for true martial realm disciples and above, they were only responsible for some other work in the grand tournament. Of course, true martial realm disciples and above also had their own tournament. However, it was a compet. 1. Tie-in between the sects that were part of the Qinwu mainland, and this kind of scene could only be described as spectacular. Today, all the streets in the Tianmen city were empty, because in today's compet. 1. Tie-in, the disciples partic. 1p. Aiding would need to pass through the Tianmen city. Whoever dared to create any chaos on the streets today would certainly be unlucky. Inside the extreme martial sect, Gu Dongchen stood on a high stage in the square, with his hands behind his back, overlooking the few tens of thousands of disciples below. This was also the first time he met with so many disciples after coming out of his closed-door training. Gu Dongchen first spoke some nonsense about integration of the peerless martial sect into the extreme martial sect, then he also spoke a lot about things like being friendly with others. Afterwards, he praised those disciples who had recently entered true martial realm, and on the spot, he gave Wu Qianqian, Zhu Rong, Yun Xiaodao and Su Weilong rich rewards which made many people very envious, but at the same time, greatly excited. Later on, Gu Dongchen actually started to severely criticize Qin Xiang, saying that Qin Xiang created a lot of loss for the extreme martial sect, caused a lot of destruction during the compet. 1. Tie-in of first inner courtyard, injured a large number of disciples, and also sparked a lot of disturbance. Qin Xiang secretly despised this martial nephew. It was pretty obvious Gu Dongchen was avenging personal vendetta in the name of public interest. But Qin Xiang didn't care much about it. No matter what he said about him, at the end of the day, he still had to call him martial uncle. After all the nonsense was finished, Gu Dongchen announced the start of the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament, and then held the first contest. The first contest was the compet. 1. Tie-in of speed, the compet. 1. Tie-in would be held for the entire day. The partic. 1. P. Ants would depart from the square in the middle of the extreme martial sect with the goal of retrieving an extreme martial token located on a hilltop at the other end of the Tianmen city, and whoever returned first would be declared as the winner. Over the years, it still took 6 hours for a round trip even for the fastest of all the winners. From this, it was clear that it was very far, and the partic. 1. P. Ants would need to constantly run, and if they took even a moment of rest, other partic. 1. P. Ants would be able to overtake them. This was a test of endurance and how rich their true qi was. During the race, any kind of conflict isn't allowed. Once found out, you'll be severely punished. Are you ready? Elder Wu said in a loud voice. Many disciples were partic. 1. P. aiding for the first time, and so they were very excited. Besides, all of them believed they could attain first place. 300,000 disciples partic. 1. P. Aided in the race, and obviously, the biggest advantage was held by those standing in the front. Originally, Chen Xiang was also in the front, but who would have thought he would be lectured and dragged by Gu Dongchen to the end, which was nothing more than nagging. Chen Xiang, you will definitely get first. Wu Qianqian was now a lot more open. She slightly smiled while looking at Chen Xiang. She had always felt an inexplicable joy whenever she was with Chen Xiang. Both Zhu Rong and Yun Xiaodao were secretly hoping that they had a chance with Wu Qianqian, but they had not expected Chen Xiang would be set with the extreme martial sect's first beauty, so they secretly despised Chen Xiang. If Wu Qianqian had not entered true martial realm, fancying Chen Xiang would also make sense. But now Wu Qianqian was in the true martial realm. A lot of true martial realm people were pursuing her, but when they saw her walking with Elder Dan, not a single one of them dared to have an idea to hit on her. That is a given. I have also signed up for all the 3 compet. 1. Tians. Hey hey. Chen Xiang laughed and said. Hearing this, Gu Dongchen and Wu Keiming's complexions slightly changed. If Chen Xiang attained first in all of the 3 compet. 1. Tians, then doesn't it mean that he would be taking all the prizes? Wu Keiming said in a clear voice. 1, 2, 3. Start. Chen Xiang and others only saw the crowd in front suddenly started galloping in madness. They were Rus. Hi plus Ing while shouting, making the entire Tianmen city slightly tremble. It was as if a horde of wild animals was charging. At this time, Chen Xiang ran like a child, happily and slowly, entering into the billowing smoke on the square. Suddenly, waves of scorching hot qi spread around. Gu Dongchen, Yun Xiaodao and the others were suddenly petrified for a moment, and they immediately thought of something. B-A-S-T-A-R-D. This brat is extremely sinister. Zhu Rong immediately cursed while looking at Chen Xiang who was in the sky, flapping those huge fire wings, flying towards the front. Too cunning, unfair, quickly come down. Some of the true martial realm disciples shouted, although they themselves could not partic. 1p8 All of their apprentices had partic. 1p8ed. Elder brother Chen, what you're doing is not right, quickly come down. Yun Xiaodao was also secretly jealous. Chen Xiang using his true qi fire wings. He indeed could very easily get the first place. Chen Xiang just laughed and didn't reply. In the rules, it was not mentioned anywhere that he couldn't fly. Chen Xiang gradually arrived near the crowd in front, the partic. 1p. Ants below soon discovered him as they raised their heads to look. In the next moment, all of them started shouting and cursing again and again. Some of them also started throwing smelly shoes and bricks towards the sky. B-A-S-T-A-R-D Quickly come down, this is not fair, we are also running B-A-S-T-A-R-D. A man angrily shouted. Chen Xiang looked down and saw those flying shoes, bricks and other debris. He suddenly laughed. There is still the second and the third prize, all of you can still concentrate on that, otherwise you won't even get S-H-I plus T. After laughing at them, Chen Xiang flapped his vermilion bird fire wings, and in the blink of an eye, he had already flown far away, while the people in the back started cursing the heavens. However, it was to no avail. They could only secretly despise Chen Xiang in their hearts. Chapter 140 Can't Explain. Chapter 140 Can't Explain. This chapter is the missed regular chapter of last week. Enjoy! Soon Chen Xiang saw a very high giant mountain in front of him with a spiral road leading to the top. At the peak there were many jade cards. To his surprise, there were tens of thousands of jade cards, completely covering the flat peak. In just half an hour or so, Chen Xiang had arrived at the peak. He picked up a jade card before quickly returning to the extreme martial sect. He just instantly obtained 100 true elemental Dan and 100,000 crystal stones so easily, and when he thought about the whole situation, he found it funny. On his way down, Chen Xiang didn't forget to infuriate that Ing and profusely sweating crowd of people below him. Of course, he was once again cursed loudly by many of them, and there were also many things thrown at him, but just like before, none of it hit him. After an hour or so, Chen Xiang returned to the extreme martial sect and handed over the jade card to Wu Kaming. Chen Xiang grinned and said, "I didn't cheat. You brat, you're very cunning," Wu Kaming said with a bitter smile. At this time on the square, only Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and Su Weilong were waiting for Chen Xiang's return. Chen Xiang's way of winning got him cursed, but he had truly not broken any rules. The only thing that could be said was that the race rules weren't perfect. After all, the extreme martial sect's old codger simply had not expected a mortal martial realm disciple to have true qi wings, a type of extremely rare and powerful martial skill. Since Chen Xiang's return all the way to his participation in the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament, no one had thought of his true qi wings. Wu Kaming gave Chen Xiang a jade box filled with true qi dan, along with a storage pouch filled with 100,000 crystal stones. However, Chen Xiang was not planning to take the heat and give it all to Zhu Rong. This is what he owed for getting those building foundations done: 100 true elemental dan worth 500,000 crystal stones, along with another 100,000 crystal stones. All in all, he now paid back the 600,000 crystal stones to Zhu Rong, clearing his entire debt. "Younger brother Chen, isn't it your turn now to take us out for a treat?" Zhu Rong said with sinister laugh. Chen Xiang scoffed and retorted, "Fatty, I think it should rightfully be your treat. After all, my hard-earned reward is all in your hands." Yun Xiaodao and the others stared at Chen Xiang with contempt in their eyes. "You dare call this hard-earned?" This was simply playing with them. Those who were actually working hard were still on the road. Everybody reckoned Chen Xiang had just woken up and came here to party. 1p8. After talking some nonsense with Yun Xiaodao and the group for a while, Chen Xiang returned to the Extreme Dan King courtyard and irrigated the Azure Profound tree. He also noticed that Wu Qianqian and Elder Dan weren't here. These days, Chen Xiang also got notifications from Icewind Valley and the Divine Weapon Heavenly Empire, saying they were still undergoing training, so he was unable to contact either Xue Xianxian or Leng Yulan. For a very long time, Xue Xianxian had entered the true martial realm. Chen Xiang had decided he would look for her after he had achieved the true martial realm. However, he was still unable to contact her, and this made him very worried. The race had finally ended. When they returned, many people lay down from exhaustion in the square. Some could still stand, and they were all cursing Chen Xiang. Actually, curses were filling the entire extreme martial sect because Chen Xiang easily got first place. He didn't even have to expend as much force as he needed to blow off some soot, yet he got such a huge reward. Who would not envy him to death? Chen Xiang was currently resting in the Extreme Dan King courtyard and preparing for the alchemy compet. 1. Tie-in, which was going to be held tomorrow. Only a few people had actually signed up for the event because there were not that many alchemists in the Extreme Martial sect. Moreover, the sect lacked resources and one had to bring their own herbs in the alchemy compet. 1. Tie-in. Some alchemists believed that refining dawn during the compet. 1. Tie-in would affect their own performance, so they didn't bother signing up. Even if alchemists wanted to partake. 1p8 in the alchemy compet. 1. Tie-in, they would have to be non-true disciples, so it was almost impossible for anyone to be in the true martial realm. It could be said that Chen Xiang had no pressure at all. Knock knock knock. Wu Qianqian lightly knocked on Chen Xiang's door, waking him up. Inside the Extreme Dan King courtyard, Chen Xiang was very relaxed, unlike when he was outside where his nerves were taut every second, every minute of the day. Chen Xiang released his divine sense and felt a familiar and peculiar flame aura. He instantly recognized it was Wu Qianqian. However, it was currently the middle of the night and a girl was knocking on a man's door. More or less, This situation made Chen Xiang's mind wander in a perverted direction. Chen Xiang got out of the bed and opened the door. "Qianqian, what's the matter?" Chen Xiang asked. Besides the start of the grand tournament when he saw Wu Qianqian, he hadn't seen her or Elder Dan around and had no clue where they both disappeared to. "Can we talk?" Wu Qianqian's mouth curved up slightly, revealing an enchanting, tender, and beautiful smile. At the moment, she became even more confident, and the previous sadness had now vanished. It was clear that she had gotten over her previous depressing mood. Chen Xiang was also happy for her. If possible, he didn't want this beautiful girl with a promising future to be ruined just because of some fleeting feelings. "Of course." Chen Xiang laughed. Currently, Wu Qianqian wore a very simple dress with a loose and casual white skirt. Her hair was bundled into a ponytail, and there was no makeup on her face, just her natural beauty. Her entire appearance was very beautiful and moving. Chen Xiang's young blood was boiling from the mature fragrance wafting from her body. "Chen Xiang, I'm leaving the extreme martial sect with the dean tomorrow. I'm sorry I can't watch tomorrow's compet. 1. Tian, please forgive me." Wu Qianqian's face was full of helplessness. "I really wanted to see your performance in the grand tournament." Chen Xiang smiled. "That's nothing, since the dean is taking you away from the extreme martial sect, it must naturally be pretty important. Don't miss this opportunity. There will be plenty of opportunities to watch me competing in the future. Maybe there will be a chance for us to partake. 1p8 in various compet. 1. Tie-in together and win glory for the extreme martial sect. There were a lot of compet. 1. Tie-ins held just for the sake of sects competing with one another. Thinking about this point, the pretty white face of Wu Qianqian's had a hint of red afterglow. In her heart she was slightly excited just imagining it. And, "Chen Xiang, I learned from Elder Dan that you will have to face a powerful adversary tomorrow. It's rumored that this man is just a hair's breadth away from the true martial realm, and he is definitely a level 3 alchemist." Wu Qianqian said. Chen Xiang nodded his head. "I'll pay attention. Anyway, where will the dean take you?" Wu Qianqian wrinkled her brows and after considering for a moment, she replied, "It's not only me and the dean. Yun Xiaodao, Zhu Rong and Su Weilong are also coming with us. This is because we are the youngest true martial realm martial artists of the extreme martial sect. It seems that the dean wants to discuss something with the other sects, considering the dean is taking us to a gathering of young true martial realm martial artists of other sections. So that's the case." Chen Xiang also wanted to go, but he was still partic. 1p. Aiding in the grand tournament. Wu Qianqian suddenly whispered, "Chen Xiang, I heard that you and Ling Yulan are sworn brother and sister. In that case, can't you also take me as your sworn sister? I just want to stay by your side." Wu Qianqian's face was very red. When she looked at Chen Xiang, her eyes were filled with antic. 1p. Asian. She knew that Xue Xianxian was Chen Xiang's fiancé. Wu Qianqian felt that she didn't stand a chance, but she still wanted to be together with Chen Xiang. She could only think of this method to stay by his side. Chen Xiang stared at her blankly and extended his hands, touching Wu Qianqian's beautiful face. This action made Wu Qianqian feel very sweet in her heart. At the same time, she was also looking forward to something. She hung her head, waiting for Chen Xiang's answer. Just as Chen Xiang was about to say something, the naughty little dragoness attached to his body imitated his voice and hurriedly replied, "I don't want you to be my sister, I want you to become my woman. I'm finished." These words immediately popped out in Chen Xiang's mind. He could not wait to strangle this naughty dragoness. Always at the most crucial moments she would say something extremely terrible. Chen Xiang's reply made Wu Qianqian's tender body fiercely shake. She looked up at Chen Xiang with a trace of surprise and excitement in her eyes. However, her mind was still doubtful. She felt like it was not Chen Xiang who spoke. "It's late, I have to go." Wu Qianqian smiled sweetly, stood up and walked away. Chen Xiang was muddle-headed and distractedly sat in his room. How was he going to explain? He simply could not explain. He felt like he was going to explode. Chapter 141 Small Bet. Chapter 141 Small Bet. Long Shui started laughing mischievously, seeing Chen Xian's bit-gored face. Her laugh became even more haughty. As of this moment, Chen Xiang just wanted to spank her ass to the point where blooming flowers would be seen all over her ass. TLN. This was hard to TL. Blooming flower means when you spank the ass, a red imprint of hand is left and it looks like a blooming flower. And obviously this part was the hardest. Smiley face. Little dragon, I've decided to keep you hungry for 8 to 10 days. Chen Xiang spoke as he suppressed his anger in his heart and clenched his teeth. Don't, I was just joking. Besides, you are a bad guy, a womanizer. I only said what you have in your heart, and didn't you see how happy Wu Qianshan was? It's like having it both ways. Long Shui proudly said. Fortunately, this Long Shui had only done mischief in front of Wu Qianshan and Hua Xiangyue. If she did it in front of Elder Dan or some other powerful figure, even if Chen Xiang had 10 lives, they would never be enough. He would certainly be dead. Chen Xiang didn't understand why this little dragon less than 1 year old was so weird. She actually had the mind of an adult. The next day, during the alchemy compet, one Tian, as much as 100 people had signed up for the compet. 1. Tian and the compet. 1. Tian rules were very strict. Also the partic. 1. Ants had to refine dawn in front of many people, so it required a certain courage and conviction to do so. Generally, alchemists refine dawn in their own private room, which was very quiet without any distractions. However, today's compet. 1 Tian was under everyone's presence on a high stage. This required a certain mental endurance. Besides, the surroundings was very noisy, which could very well affect their performance, but this could test an alchemist's level. Today, fewer people were in the square, but the square was still full. After all, it was still a compet. 1 Tian, whoever came to watch were very lively. Besides, many of them had heard Chen Xiang was going to partic. 1 P8 in this compet. 1 Tian 2 they had decided to hara him during the compet. 1 Tian from the stands, so that he would be unable to refine dawn with a calm heart. Chen Xiang had not seen Yun Xiaodao and the others. Dean Gu Dongchen was also not present. This made Chen Xiang secretly despise Zhu Rong and the others. They didn't even think of greeting him before going, while Wu Qianshan had actually told him, a person who didn't have much of an interaction with him. This made him feel warmth in his heart. Regarding Wu Qianshan, his heart didn't reject this ranked 1 beauty. In his heart, he liked her a little. The whole alchemy compet. 1 Tian was supervised by Elder Dan. Her flaming eyes were looking downwards, and many alchemists felt a chill running down their spines. Regarding Elder Dan, this mysterious temperamental woman, there was not a single soul who didn't fear her. If Elder Dan was angry, they had learned their lesson from watching Chen Xiang. Although Elder Dan was dead set against Chen Xiang was staying in Extreme Dan King Courtyard. Many people thought Elder Dan intentionally made him go there, so that she could more straightforwardly deal with him. Chen Xiang, why is the growth rate of the azure profound tree so fast? It is far more than what I had antic. 1 P8 Elder Dan's voice, as if it was traveling through a silk thread, reached Chen Xiang's ear. I don't know, but no matter how fast it is growing, it has no relation with you. That was planted by me. Chen Xiang responded similarly, and a proud smile was hanging on his face. Humph, what are you going to do with so many azure profound fruit? You don't even know how to refine a building foundation, Dan. Elder Dan coldly retorted. Can't I just eat them? That thing is mine. What I want to do, it's none of your business. Chen Xiang laughed and said, seeing Elder Dan's whole body slightly tremble in anger. He was delighted in his heart. the corners of his mouth slightly rose, he was filled with pride. Alchemy Compet. 1. Tie-in starts. If anyone was found cheating or violating the rules, they will certainly be expelled from the extreme martial sect. Quickly select your location. Elder Dan coldly shouted. Her penetrating and majestic voice made everyone's body h.I. plus ver. The entire square immediately quieted down. Chen Xiang was just about to choose a location, but suddenly, he heard Elder Dan spoke. Chen Xiang, you refined Dan beside me, you're crafty. I'm worried you will be using some means invisible to the naked eye to cheat. I want to see how you refine. For others to refine Dan, in the middle of the square, a huge high stage was erected, and Elder Dan stood on a high stage at a distance. This made Partik 1p ants relatively relaxed. If Elder Dan was near them, even breathing was very difficult for them, because everyone was fearful of Elder Dan. Chen Xiang let out a light snort. He wasn't fearful of Elder Dan. After all, she was his martial niece, and she had already supervised him before while he was refining the true Qi Dan. At this time, a man who was approximately 20 years old or so with a somewhat juvenile aura walked towards the high stage of Elder Dan. This made everyone surprised. Although this man's face was filled with arrogance, the white jade card on his waist made many of them dumbfounded. Everyone immediately realized the ident. 1. Tie of this man, isn't he the level 3 young alchemist from Lu family of the Herb King Mountain? I remember his name is Lu Zhengnan. At such a young age, he is already in the true martial realm and also a level 3 alchemist. It seems in the future he will become an outstanding figure who would be capable of controlling a region with just his name. An old man said. Chen Xiang also had heard of this man from Wu Qianqian last night. He had also heard of Lu family of the Herb King Mountain. It was a family controlling a large number of herbs. They even had the azure profound fruit, but they would not sell it. There were also many strong martial artists in Lu family. Rumor was there was also a Nirvana realm old codger in the Lu family. Disciple Lu Jingnan greets Elder Dan. Lu Jingnan respectfully gave a salute to Elder Dan, but he still had a look of pride. Is there anything you want to do? Elder Dan, seeing that dirty look of Lu Jingnan, made her furious in her heart, but she didn't attack him. She felt Chen Xiang was more amiable than this Lu Jingnan. Disciple has entered the true martial realm last night, but I know true martial realm disciples cannot partic. 1 p. 8 in the grand tournament. However, I would still like to partic. 1 p8 because I want to compete with Chen Xiang. Lu Jingnan looked at Chen Xiang, his eyes filled with an aggressive aura and contempt, as if to say, I'm now a level 3 alchemist, and also in the true martial realm. You are far worse than me. Chen Xiang secretly sighed. Although he admitted this Lu Jingnan's talent was good, he was still too inexperienced. He could already foresee that this Lu Jingnan would be in a complete mess after being defeated. But in other disciples' opinion, this was an explosive information. Lu Jingnan had actually entered the true martial realm. He was just 21 years old. Although he was 2 years older than Yun Xiaodao, Lu Jingnan was still an alchemist. Because of that, everyone believed Lu Jingnan was more talented than Yun Xiaodao. If it's just the alchemy, it is nothing. I'll allow you to partic. 1 p8 in this compet. 1 tie-in. However, if it is martial art compet. 1 tie-in, you should already know the answer. Elder Dan spoke and dismissed him. She just wanted to take a look whether Chen Xiang would be able to defeat Lu Jingnan or not. Chen Xiang laughed and said, Brother Lu is a rare genius born once in 1,000 years. It's my pleasure to compete with you. Since Brother Lu came for me, then I will gamble a little, might as well enliven the atmosphere. Chen Xiang was going to bet once again. Last time, he won a true martial realm apprentice and the qualifications to enter the extreme Dan King courtyard. This time, what would he place as ante? Elder Dan also felt it was very interesting. Although she was against Chen Xiang at every step, she was also concerned about Chen Xiang. Once she came out from her closed-door training, she first inquired about Chun Xiang and what he had done, and Chun Xiang had not let her down. He created a lot of noise. Wisconsin I+ing for it earnestly. Lu Jingnan proudly smiled. Even if Chun Xiang hadn't mentioned it, he would have still suggested it himself. He was a true martial realm martial artist, and also a level 3 alchemist. He got certified from the Danxiang Tower. That represents a very high honor. Since you propose to bet first, what do you want to bet? Lu Jingnan asked. He knew Chun Xiang had a good amount of resources. The ante would certainly be enough to shock everyone. However, he was not worried. He thought he could win. Every gambler would always think so. Chun Xiang faintly smiled, turned over his palm, and 3 Dan S. Hi plus Ning brightly in azure and golden aura were sandwiched between his fingers. Chun Xiang actually used 3 building foundation dawn he himself refined as an ante. Chapter 142 The Final Strike. Chapter 142 The Final Strike. 3 building foundations dawn. Are you betting or not? Chun Xiang asked. Whoever has the higher ranking than the other in the compet. 1 Tian wins. Just a moment ago, those 3 building foundation dawn were blinding to the eyes of others, yet he called them just a little bet? For all of them, it was difficult to even see a building foundation dan in their entire lifetime. Meanwhile, Chun Xiang actually took out 3 building foundation dawn at once for the ante. This was simply being extremely prodigal to actually take out these kind of things for a mere bet. Many of the people were cursing Chun Xiang. Elder Dan was also stunned. She immediately transmitted to Chun Xiang, "Where did you get these?" At the same time, Lu Jingnan also asked, "Where did you get these building foundation dawn?" If Chun Xiang himself refined these dawn, then Lu Jingnan would bet Jack S.H.I plus T. "It's none of your business where I got these from. Do you dare to bet or not? Let it be if you are not betting." Chun Xiang dismissively said. Careful people could see that out of these 3 building foundation dawn, 2 of them were relatively dark in color, while the other one was relatively more L.U.S. trues. Of course, no one thought that Chun Xiang was the one who refined these building foundation dawn. Even Elder Dan believed it was impossible for him. In her opinion, it was still too early for Chun Xiang, not to mention he didn't even have a fire spirit. "It doesn't even matter, don't bet if you can't." Chun Xiang retrieved the building foundation dawn with a look of disappointment. Lu Jingnan being unable to bet? This would not only make him lose face within the sect, but he would also be ridiculed in the entire Lu family. He firmly replied, "I currently don't have the building foundation dawn, but if I lose within 10 days, I will definitely give you 3 building foundation dawn." Chun Xiang had 3 building foundation dawn, but he had not taken any. Everybody was assuming that Chun Xiang had prepared these for entering the true martial realm. Many people were extremely envious of Chun Xiang. After all, he could actually get 3 building foundation dawn just for preparation. Everyone could already foresee Chun Xiang becoming a true martial realm martial artist in the near future. Those older alchemists on the compet 1 Tian stage could only secretly sigh in their heart. They didn't have such a good fate, but they didn't think they would lose to these 2 younglings in alchemy technique. Regarding the origin of Chun Xiang's building foundation dawn, no one was that curious. Chun Xiang had simply not revealed how he got it, even if it was Elder Dan who was asking. He deliberately did so in order to make Elder Dan depressed. The alchemy compet 1 Tian was very comprehensive. All of the partic 1 P. ants needed to refine from a list of relatively common dawn, while the highest ranking one would be able to refine in the compet 1 Tian was a high-grade spirit level dan. However, most partic 1 P. ants were only able to refine to the middle-grade spirit level dawn. Lu Jingnan easily fulfilled this because level 3 alchemist needed to refine 3 different types of middle-grade spirit level dawn. In the first compet 1 Tian partic 1p ants had to refine low-grade mortal-level quenching body Dan within half an hour. In blink of an eye, half an hour Paas said. The first to successfully finish refinement was Lu Jingnan, while Chen Xiang intentionally slowed down. He only opened the alchemical furnace near the end of time limit. He did so in order for Lu Jingnan to underestimate his opponent. Besides, it would also save his consumption and be a lot easier too. Elder Dan intentionally glared at Chen Xiang with one eye. Chen Xiang was easily able to refine the low-grade spirit-level True Qi Dan, not to mention this kind of low-grade Dan. In the first compet, 1 Tian 5 Partic, 1p ants failed to meet the criteria and they quietly left. In the second compet, 1 Tian Partic, 1p ants were needed to refine a middle-grade mortal-level baptizing marrow Dan, and in third compet, 1 Tian a high-grade mortal-level grand elemental Dan. For both compet, 1 Tians the Partic, 1p ants were given a time limit of half an hour to complete the Dan. In both compet, 1 Tian's Lu Jingnan was first to open his alchemical furnace, while Chen Xiang still always opened the lid at the very end. This made Lu Jingnan secretly proud in his heart. After the two compet, 1 Tian's only 60 Partic, 1p ants were left on the stage. It was already noon, but the compet, 1 Tian continued. There was rarely any time to rest. This was as much a test of endurance of the alchemists as it was their skill. As a result, the audience also had to suffer as they continued to wait for the result. However, there were still those who became impatient and left early. In the fourth compet, 1 Tian, it was the low-grade spirit-level True Qi Dan, and it had to be completed within an hour. This was very demanding for the alchemists under the true martial realm. There were a lot of people who couldn't refine and they soon left the stage. There were also some who didn't prepare the herbs, but most of the Partic, 1p ants thought they would fail to meet the requirements anyway. In addition to Chen Xiang, there were only 15 alchemists left. In Chen Xiang's opinion, the True Qi Dan was still very common for him. After all, he would usually refine them in bulk for Long Shui, this greedy little dragon, to eat them like jelly beans. However, he still intentionally slowed himself down and opened the alchemical furnace near the end of time limit. Lu Jingnan continued to remain high-profile. Every time he was the first to open the alchemical furnace, and the quality was also not that bad. Time was up, and now there were only 8 alchemists left standing and soon the Partic, 1p ants were narrowed down to only 7. Elder Dan nodded her head in satisfaction from this result. Aside from Chen Xiang and Lu Jingnan, 5 other mortal martial realm alchemists were able to refine the True Qi Dan within an hour. This was a lot better than the previous compet, 1 Tian, although the age of these 5 alchemists were nowhere near small number. It was soon afternoon, the sun was burning in the sky, but now it was also the tense final moments of the alchemy compet. 1 Tian. This is the final compet. 1 Tian. Everyone is free to refine whatever they want. The time allotted is 4 hours. You can refine the most high-grade Dan possible for your skill level. Whoever's Dan is ranked higher in the end will win. You can also refine different types of dawn to improve your odds of winning. Elder Dan shouted. Lu Jingnan slightly upturned his mouth, because he knew he would undoubtedly win this compet. 1 Tian. Due to the fact he was the only level 3 alchemist, he was able to refine 3 different types of middle-grade spirit-level dawn. He didn't think Chen Xiang or other alchemists could even refine a single middle-grade spirit-level Dan, and Lu Jingnan was confident within 4 hours he would be able to refine all 3 dawn. Chen Xiang looked at Lu Jingnan with a smile, saying, "Brother Lu, you're looking very confident. It's obvious that you're sure you will win. Then how about we add a little more to the bet?" Chen Xiang actually wanted to raise the stakes at this moment. Suddenly, the bored audience acted like they were injected with chicken's blood. Add even more to ante, whoever won Wouldn't it be turned into a giant profit? TLN. Injected with chicken's blood, meaning energetic. Many people in the audience were discussing with their gambling friends about increment in the stake. Most of them had also gambled a little, however the majority of them had placed their bets on Lu Jingnan. After all, on his waist the level 3 alchemist's jade card was hanging, showing his very prestigious position and held the strength that accompanied the Tli. Elder Dan looked at the slightly smiling Chen Xiang and knew that Lu Jingnan had ran out of luck today. Last time she had also lost to Chen Xiang, but she just had to let Chen Xiang enter the extreme Dan King courtyard. Whenever gamblers thought they would certainly win, they would always increase the stakes, perhaps even putting all of their possessions on the line to pressure their opponent. Chen Xiang and Lu Jingnan were now both in the same mindset. Both of them thought they would certainly win, which is why neither of them hesitated to increase the stakes. "You can take out any amount, I will match it," Lu Jingnan declared. His face was filled with confidence. Meanwhile, the other alchemists had already started refining their own dawn. They didn't accompany these two madmen in their insanity. "I heard your herb King Mountain has a 9 sun flames fruit." Chen Xiang mischievously laughed. "If I take out this L spirit GRAS, are you willing to use 9 sun flames fruit as the ante?" Once the black L spirit GRAS appeared, the audience went into an uproar. Although it was only palm-sized, this herb was still incredibly precious because it was a sacred herb which could even raise the dead. The 9 sun flames fruit was also a precious high-grade profound level fire attribute herb that was mainly used to refine the high-grade profound level profound sun fire dan. The profound sun fire dan had a very good effect and could allow one to continually elevate their flame's quality. It was very helpful for upgrading the flames of alchemists. Many people only knew about this usage, but Su Meiyao had told Chen Xiang that this profound sun fire dan was the best dan to feed a fire spirit. Chen Xiang was currently unable to use it, but he would definitely need it in the future. According to Su Meiyao, if one wanted to easily walk down the road of alchemy, possessing a fire spirit was a must. "Good, I'll bet," Lu Jingnan said while clenching his teeth. "I fear Brother Lu can't take this responsibility. After all, it is a very valuable herb to Lu family." Chen Xiang said with a worried look. If the Lu family refused to hand it over, though he had no way to make them pay, the Lu family would have to carry the Tli of people who would not pay up their debt. "I can," Lu Jingnan responded seriously. Chapter 143 Impossible. Chapter 143 Impossible. Chen Xiang smiled and nodded his head. His smile was cold and sinister. If the Lu family did not pay up, he would make their public image change drastically. Chen Xiang finally began taking things seriously. Elder Dan carefully checked his alchemical furnace just in case he wanted to cheat. At this time, the entire crowd was looking at these two young alchemists very seriously. Everyone thought that Chen Xiang's odds to win were a bit low. First off, Chen Xiang was refining under the strict supervision of Elder Dan, adding on additional pressure. Secondly, Chen Xiang didn't have a backer or any support like the Lu family, an alchemy aristocratic family with many rich resources. Lastly, Chen Xiang didn't have an alchemist jade card on his waist. Chen Xiang started processing the herbs. According to the rules, the herbs must be processed during the compet. 1. Tie-in, and if they were pre-processed, it would be considered a violation of the rules. Elder Dan was staring closely at Chen Xiang. After she saw him take out a white GRAS, she was very shocked in her heart. This white GRAS looked very similar to a white bone in form, and was also crystal clear with no blemishes. It was white like beautiful jade. This was the white jade bone GRAS, the primary herb for refining the white jade dan. The white jade dan was a high-grade spirit level dan, and was on the same level as the true elemental dan. Ordinarily, only a level 4 alchemist was able to refine this sort of Dan, and there were only a total of 10 level 4 alchemists in the entire Extreme Dan courtyard of the Extreme Martial sect. In fact, the low number of alchemists resulted in the Extreme Martial sect's supply of true elemental Dan being very lacking, so they had to buy them from Danxiang Taoyuan. Thankfully, Danxiang Taoyuan gave very low prices towards the Extreme Martial sect as a result of the good relations between the two. Elder Dan secretly despised Chen Xiang's actions. He actually revealed nothing, even to her. He was acting like a pig to eat the tiger. From the instant she saw Chen Xiang take out the herbs for refining a white jade Dan, she knew that Lu Zhengnan had no chance of winning. "Don't you think what you're doing is shameless?" Elder Dan transmitted to Chen Xiang. "Nah, we mutually agreed for this bet, not to mention the fact we are gambling, everything is fair and square. I'm just too lazy to boast about what high-ranking Dawn I can refine. It was simply failure in his part for underestimating me. If he was not so arrogant and didn't care so much about face, he definitely would not have lost so badly," Chen Xiang said with a mischievous smirk. "Humph." Elder Dan let a cold snort, but she was unable to say anything. She just felt that Chen Xiang was too crafty, and she decided to take special notice of this particular characteristic of his from this point on in order to avoid getting sold by Chen Xiang while helping him count the money. Lu Zhengnan was far left from Chen Xiang's stage, and couldn't see what type of Dan he was refining. Either way, Lu Zhengnan would never pay attention to it anyway, and he concentrated on his own alchemy. However, Chen Xiang noticed that Lu Zhengnan took out the materials for a middle-grade spirit-level martial elemental Dan. Chen Xiang placed his own herbs in the brilliant flame dragon furnace before pouring in a white spiritual essence. This was another primary resource required for refining the white jade Dan. On one side, he was leisurely refining the white jade Dan, while on the other side, he was processing the materials for yet another Dan. Xian Zhen Jiare. S. 10,000-year-old spirit fruit, spirit crystal essence, and grand elemental nut. It seems like you already know how to refine the true elemental Dan. Elder Dan took a deep breath and her voice was full of surprise. She had not expected that in just a span of 3 years since she had not seen Chen Xiang his alchemical skills would advance to such a level. Chen Xiang could actually refine 2 different types of high-grade spirit-level Dawn. "Littler martial niece, I cannot just casually become your martial uncle. I also have a bit of foundation." Chen Xiang proudly smiled and replied. "In other words, you are a level 4 alchemist?" Elder Dan was scared for a moment and asked. "Of course, but that jade card was a little big and the words written on it were a bit too BLOOD. Why, making the whole thing somewhat ugly. That's why I don't like hanging it on my waist like Lu Zhengnan." Chen Xiang smiled and said, "Just 20 years old and a level 4 alchemist." Even if Elder Dan knew how hateful Chen Xiang was, she could not help but admire him. She was totally left speechless. She didn't know what to say. "Elder Dan, is there some relation between you and Danxiang Taoyuan's dean?" Chen Xiang asked. He was also using divine sense to converse with Elder Dan while he was refining the dawn. Elder Dan's body slightly trembled. "I cannot answer you. Whatever, sooner or later I'll defeat you and then you will become my woman. At that time I will know everything about you," Chen Xiang said with a nasty laugh. "Humph." Elder Dan sneered. "There is still a long way to go. Perhaps at that time I would have already entered the heavenly realms." Actually, this was highly likely as Elder Dan was in the Nirvana realm and stood at the peak of the mortal world. Moreover, she was an alchemistress and could indeed advance very quickly. Chen Xiang no longer spoke to her, and seriously concentrated on refining the dawn. 4 hours. This meant that the compet 1. Tian would continue until night. Now there were only a few gamblers that stayed behind, and they had bet quite a few crystal stones and were awaiting the end result. Chen Xiang didn't want to give a gigantic crippling mental blow to Lu Zhengnan, which was why he was intentionally taking a bit longer to refine. Originally it would have just taken him an hour and he could call it a day, but he was worried Lu Zhengnan would not accept it and do something crazy. Fortunately you didn't take Wu Qianqian as your apprentice, otherwise she would have to call me marital granduncle. Chen Xiang said and smiled. At this time, he was almost done completely refining the two different types of dawn. Qianqian's talent is very high. I will vigorously cultivate her and definitely make her transcend you. Do not be too proud. Elder Dan said with full confidence. That is for the best. Chen Xiang had an equivocal smile hanging on his face, but the look in his eyes was somewhat complicated. Then thank you for cultivating my future wife. Wu Qianqian is destined to be my woman. Long Shui again posed as Chen Xiang and transmitted with divine sense to Elder Dan. Hi plus Ver ran down in Chen Xiang's spine, but he couldn't help but admire Long Shui for using divine sense so wisely. She could even avoid getting found out by Elder Dan, and also implicate him. He had already exhorted 1,000, no 10,000 times to this naughty little dragoness not to play a joke in front of Elder Dan. This could be very troublesome. What? Elder Dan's voice was extremely cold. She certainly knew about Wu Qianqian's thoughts for Chen Xiang, and also knew that he had greatly helped and encouraged Wu Qianqian, but Elder Dan had not expected Wu Qianqian and Chen Xiang to be together. This time around, she went with Dean to meet the young heroes of other sect and families. She will definitely change her mind. There are far better men than you. Elder Dan coldly said. Chen Xiang was suddenly somewhat dissatisfied. Really? Wait and see. A little less than half an hour was left from the total 4 hours when Lu Jingnan stood up with a look of excitement. He laughed loudly and shouted, Chen Xiang, you lose! I refined 3 kinds of middle-grade spirit-level dawn. A true martial realm alchemist who was responsible for supervising the compet. 1. Tian nodded his head. Lu Jingnan has successfully refined the melting poison Dan, the martial elemental Dan, and the exploding Qi Dan. All of them are middle-grade spirit-level dawn, and their quality is also top-grade. Although it was midnight, the audience that had been waiting for the results burst into cheers one after another. All of them though Lu Jingnan would win. As she was able to refine 3 kinds of middle-grade spirit-level dawn, he was really a level 3 alchemist. Chen Xiang just laughed. Don't be so happy, I'm not finished with my refining yet. So what? Can you refine 4 kinds of middle-grade spirit-level dawn? Lu Jingnan sneered. He already foresaw himself getting the H.E.L. Spirit GRA.SS and the 3-building foundation dawn. The 4-hour duration was finished as Chen Xiang gradually opened his alchemical furnace. He dismissively said, refined 2 kinds of high-grade spirit-level dawn, respectively they were the white jade Dan and the true elemental Dan. The people who originally thought they had won their bets instantly had their smiles frozen, while those who were upset due to thinking they lost betting on Chen Xiang were also somewhat doubtful if what they heard was true or not. Impossible! Lu Jingnan immediately yelled. Another one coming. Chapter 144 Winning Streak. Chapter 144 Winning Streak. Chen Xiang stood up and stretched his waist. He looked at Elder Dan because she was the one supervising him, and only with her statement would he be able to prove he refined the 2 high-grade spirit-level dawn. Whether it was the refining difficulty or the price, the 2 high-grade spirit-level dawn were far above the 3 kinds of middle-grade spirit-level dawn that Lu Jingnan refined. Elder Dan stated, It's true. I personally witnessed the entire refining process. From the processing of the herbs to the solidification of the pill, I saw the entire thing with my own eyes. He did not cheat. Just from the warmth and freshness of the dawn, it is clear that they have been refined recently. Lu Jingnan wrinkled his brows as his complexion became ugly. He quickly went up the stage, some true martial realm alchemists also gathered over on the stage. There were many true martial realm alchemists who were able to refine one type of high-grade spirit level Dan, but their success rate was extremely low. A jade box was covered in a crystal-clear powder and was still exuding some residual heat. After opening the lid, a rich herb fragrance wafted into everyone's noses. It was a very cool and refreshing scent. This was a genuine high-quality, white jade Dan. In another box, 5 crystal-clear S8 were laid, inside of which there was a group of white mist at the center of the dawn. This was the true elemental Dan, and its quality was also very good. But what made people shocked was the fact that Chen Xiang had actually refined 5 dawn at once from just a single set of herbs. Looking at the fresh dawn in both jade boxes, Lu Zhengnan clenched both his fists, his nails deeply embedded into his palm. His whole body was trembling and profusely sweating as he muttered, "Impossible! You cannot possibly refine 2 kinds of high-grade spirit-level dawn. Impossible! Impossible! Not to mention 2 different types of high-grade spirit-level dawn, even if it was just one kind. Chen Xiang would still win. Do you suspect that I poorly supervised him?" Elder Dan coldly said. Lu Zhengnan gulped. That previous arrogance of his was blown away to who knows where. He tried to calm himself down. "No, I don't dare to doubt Elder Dan. I just think Chen Xiang had some means to cheat and didn't let you see." "Exactly. It is impossible for Chen Xiang to refine high-grade spirit-level dawn. What would he use to refine? It takes the support of a lot of rare herbs, not to mention the fact that during his disappearance he was still healing, and the time when he was in the Fragrant City. If he could refine these dawn, then why didn't he go for the assessment?" Underneath the stage a madman loudly shouted. Those who had also lost comparatively soon followed him in the shouting. This was because most people had bet on Lu Zhengnan to win. Chen Xiang coldly smiled before he went in front of the stage, loudly shouting, "Yes, refining 2 different types of dawn requires a lot of herbs, but don't forget that when I came from the secular world, I already had metal spirit fruit and thousand vein fruit. Furthermore, during the inner sect assessment I had also found a few azure profound fruit. I sold these, and it was enough for me by a large number of herbs. I was indeed seriously injured by Liao Xiaoyun of true martial sect, but I was also carrying a few white jade Dan with me, which allowed me to heal quickly. During the long period of time I was missing, I was mainly learning alchemy. If you don't believe me, you could go to Danxiang Tower and ask Mrs. Li. I purchased a lot of herbs from her." Then, Chen Xiang took out a jade card. Above this jade card was 4 golden stripes. On its back there were 10 signatures carved in blood. This was the proof of a level 4 alchemist. At that time I went for the assessment. This is my proof. Chen Xiang raised his hand high to show the jade card. In the middle of the night, those 4 SHI plus Ning golden lines representing the level 4 alchemist status were glittering like stars, dazzling the eyes of many people. At this time, the audiences underneath quieted down. A level 4 alchemist. Chen Xiang was a little younger than Lu Zhengnan, yet he was already a level 4 alchemist. Although Chen Xiang and Lu Zhengnan had a difference of simply 1 level, this was like the difference between heaven and earth. Everyone was simultaneously shocked, but they secretly cursed Chen Xiang for being sinister, even daring to hide in plain sight before just to ruthlessly knock out Lu Zhengnan. Lu Zhengnan with a shaking finger pointed at Chen Xiang. You actually. Puff! Lu Zhengnan spewed out a mouthful of blood. He lost very badly, 3 building foundation dawn and a 9 sun flames fruit. This was a very large bet. Previously, he was absolutely sure of his success, which is why he dared to bet so much. However, he hadn't even gotten permission from his family to bet the precious herb. He knew that after today, he would be in very big trouble. If you suspect even Danxiang Tower's alchemist certification system, then even I don't have any way to convince you. Do you admit defeat or not? If I don't receive the ante, then don't blame me for doing something," Chen Xiang coldly declared. "If you can't afford to gamble, then don't carelessly follow up." Chen Xiang's ante was his own, but in case of Lu Jingnan it was his family's. Just from this point alone, the difference between the two of them was clear-cut. Lu Jingnan stared at Chen Xiang. His eyes were filled with murderous intention. Chen Xiang's complexion suddenly became deadly cold. He clearly knew what Lu Jingnan had in mind. If the creditor was dead, then he would not owe any debt. Although many people in the crowd underneath was thinking of cursing Chen Xiang, they did not dare to do so. After all, he was a level 4 alchemist and, aside from him, there were only 10 of them present in the entire extreme martial sect. Additionally, all of them supplied resources to extreme martial sect, their Iden. One ties was very obli. If they, in any way, offended a powerful alchemist, then the consequences would be extremely miserable. Chen Xiang cultivated Tai Chi subduing dragon exercise, which was why he was able to restrain his breath. It was also the reason why Elder Dan and Gu Dongchen, these ancient Tai OONS, were unable to probe Chen Xiang's strength. Originally Elder Dan secretly suspected that Chen Xiang was already in true martial realm. However, when she saw 3 building foundation Dan with Chen Xiang, she no longer thought so. She summed that Chen Xiang had reached a bottleneck. Lu Jingnan was violently vomiting blood. This was very rarely seen. It could only be imagined how much hatred he felt towards Chen Xiang. After all, Chen Xiang indeed seized everything very cheaply and easily won so many good things. This could only be blamed on Lu Jingnan for being too inexperienced. He loved publicizing and the publicity that came with it. He was not enough crafty and low-key like Chen Xiang. The miserable loss was only inevitable. At the beginning, when Lu Jingnan revealed his trump card, he was so sure that he was not going to lose, and just followed up when Chen Xiang increased the ante. But in the end Lu Jingnan suffered a cruce. Hi+ing defeat. Chen Xiang, wait for me! Lu Jingnan viciously roared. He fiercely wiped the blood stain off his mouth and left. Hey! Chen Xiang only laughed in response. He casually picked up another 100 true elemental Dan and 100,000 crystal stones from Elder Dan before heading back to the Extreme Dan King courtyard in a happy mood. After obtaining the 100 true elemental Dan, 10 of them were immediately taken by Long Shui, this greedy little dragoness. This made him feel very sad, but after Long Shui took these 10 true elemental Dan, it was very difficult for her to get any more. Chen Xiang strictly controlled the usage of these true elemental Dan. They were not like the true Qi Dan which could be easily refined. Since the start of the Extreme Martial Grand Tournament, 2 back-to-back compet. 1 tie-ins had ended with the grand winner for both compet. 1 tie-ins being Chen Xiang. Even many of the true martial realm disciples were secretly jealous of Chen Xiang because of the things he had obtained. Not to mention the fact that Chen Xiang also possessed at least 3 building foundation Dan, which meant that it was very likely for him to enter the true martial realm. What none of them knew was that Chen Xiang had long since become a true martial realm martial artist, but hid his own strength mainly out of habit. The third and final compet. 1. Tie-in was of martial arts, but it was being held 10 days later. This was the dean's declaration. During these 10 days, all of the inner sect disciples mutually exchanged pointers. Some of the true martial realm disciples publicly said on their experiences, and many were taught directly by elders from the elder courtyard. Chapter 145 Encountering an Old Foe Once Again. Chapter 145 Encountering an Old Foe Once Again. Many true martial realm disciples were showing off their strength and powerful divine martial skills for the grand tournament, attracting the jealousy of many mortal martial realm disciples. For them, this was also a kind of incentive. Some disciples who rushed about everywhere year in and year out began to take out some strange exotic things to broaden the horizons of the inner disciples. There was also someone who stood up on a table, blowed a horn, and then began to speak about his own majestic life experience. During this period, there were some small-scale activities where disciples could win a few dawn and crystal stones by using their strength or wisdom. Some examples were answering questions and solving riddles. On the other hand, Chen Xiang just stayed in the extreme Dan King courtyard and used the dragon saliva to accelerate the growth of the azure profound tree, thus speeding up the fruit's growth. Elder Dan also found out about this and was very suspicious. Although she was very well informed, she was still unable to understand why the tree's growth was so fast. 5 days passed. Said, the azure profound tree's flowers were already cocked. Ned and were about to congeal the fruit. Chen Xiang secretly sighed in emotion within his heart. He found out that the azure profound tree didn't need the dragon saliva for ripening and could grow very quickly on its own. The azure profound tree gathers wood essence to bear fruit. This tree is planted inside the mysterious realm, an environment filled to the brim with rich spirit qi. The absorption speed of spirit qi is very quick, which is probably why it can quickly turn the spirit qi into fruit. Su Meiyao said, however, these were just her guesses. The qualifiers had already started a while ago. To be precise in how it worked, many fights were placed on many stages till there were only 8 party. 1p ants were left for the final martial art compet. 1 Tian. There were many party. 1p ants for the martial arts compet. 1 Tian and the inner and outer courtyards were A.S. signed to carry out the qualifiers. Each day there were many people who were eliminated. In these qualifying stages, almost everyone was afraid of encountering Chen Xiang because he was the number 1 disciple of the inner courtyard, and he had no peers under the true martial realm. However, there were also many strong young newcomers who wanted to challenge Chen Xiang. During these qualifiers, Chen Xiang was really benevolent and used a very gentle way to defeat his opponent. If he found any deficiencies in them, he would pass along 1 or 2 pointers. After all, the grand tournament was for the disciples to exchange pointers with one another, and so Chen Xiang won the respect of many people. Chen Xiang had just finished pouring the dragon saliva onto the azure profound tree and started to return to his own private room. He swallowed 5 true elemental dawn as a large sudden rush of true qi burst out from within his body. He operated the Tai Chi subduing dragon exercise and started refining to transform it into his own true qi. At last, all of the true qi had been turned into divine sense which poured forth into his consciousness, feeding the S.H.I. plus into infant soul. According to Long Shui, only when this S.H.I. plus into infant soul was a little grown up would he be able to cultivate S.H.I. plus into. Unconsciously, Chen Xiang became immersed in the cultivation of the S.H.I. plus into infant soul. With a single-minded attitude, he started congealing a lot of divine sense to feed his infant soul. Although he didn't eat any more true elemental dawn, his yin and yang divine veins were able to absorb a large amount of spirit qi to aid in the cultivation process. Not far away, Elder Dan was standing on a rooftop, looking down upon a private room. This was the location of Chen Xiang's room, she muttered. It really is a yin and yang vein, only those things have the ability to absorb spirit qi at this insane speed. He really is the same as teacher's martial ancestor. From a long time ago, ever since Chen Xiang began residing in the extreme Dan courtyard, he had been closely monitored by Elder Dan. However, Chen Xiang was very cautious and only used dragon saliva when no one was in the extreme Dan courtyard. He had not seen or caught Elder Dan, but he guessed that she was secretly watching him. For the past 3 days, Chen Xiang was endlessly cultivating. His continuous absorption of spirit qi had not diminished even the slightest bit, On the contrary, it was only growing. This caused many people residing in the elder courtyard to become extremely shocked. However, simply due to the fact this unique event was occurring inside the extreme Dan King courtyard, no one dared to casually go and check, and only observed the spectacle from far away. Elder Dan coldly snorted. Could it be that this brat wants to enter the true martial realm? In these last 3 days he didn't even go out to partic. 1P8 in the qualifiers and lost the qualifications to partic. 1P8 in the martial arts compet. 1 Tian. This is extremely unlike him. According to his usual personally, he would have taken first place before attempting to break through. At this time, Chen Xiang was in a state of forgetting everything around him, ignoring all outside stimuli. He was like a newborn baby sleeping in a mother's womb, who knew nothing but still continued to absorb a large amount of nutrients to grow. Chen Xiang's consciousness was entirely submerged in the S.H.I. plus into infant soul. He was solely thinking of absorbing a large amount of divine sense to grow. Regarding any matters occurring outsider or other disturbances, he had no clue what was going on. Elder Sister Meiyao, I tried my best but I still cannot wake him up. I think it's best to let him be. If we forcefully wake him up, things could turn out very troublesome. Long Shui helplessly said in a sweet voice. She knew that Chen Xiang now had no way to win the 100 true elemental dawn. Due to this she was secretly distressed. The martial art compet. 1 Tian had long ago begun. The extreme martial sect's disciples were very surprised because Chen Xiang was not in any of the final 8 locations. Before, many people had some that, in light of Chen Xiang's strength, it would be very easy for him to win first place. After asking about, everyone only came to learn that Chen Xiang had not arrived on time to partic. 1P8 in the qualifiers and was thus eliminated. Furthermore, he had disappeared 5 days ago. While Chen Xiang was cultivating, he was extremely pleased with his results because the S.H.I. plus into infant soul had now grown a lot. Previously, it had the appearance of a newborn but now its appearance was same as that of a 6-month-old baby. Chen Xiang learned from Long Shui that the growth phase of the spirit was very slow. Take Long Shui for examples. It took her a total of 8 long years before she was finally able to come out of her dragon S8. If she wanted to become an adult, it would take an even longer period of time. However, once she became an adult she would have the strength to disregard everyone and everything in existence. Chen Xiang finally woke up to the tender and sweet voice of Long Shui, which was filled to the brim of anger. Chen Xiang, you have been asleep for 5 days. Those 100 true elemental Dan and 100,000 crystal stones have all gone down the drain. Why did you not wake me up? Chen Xiang immediately left the private room and walked towards the extreme martial square. He was very upset in his heart. I called you many times, who knew that you would cultivate so earnestly. Next time, do not take all your divine sense and stuff it into your infant soul, otherwise it wouldn't be strange for you to be asleep for 8 to 10 years. Long Shui seriously told him. Her tone was very solemn. This was because she didn't get to eat anything ever since Chen Xiang fell asleep. Chen Xiang could not wait to give himself 2 slaps. His own negligence had caused his removal from the martial arts compet. 1 Tian and resulted in the loss of 100 true elemental Dan and 100,000 crystal stones. He felt like a knife was twisting in his heart. He arrived in the middle of the square which was surrounded by many people. However, all the disciples of the extreme martial sect had their faces filled with anger. At this time, Chen Xiang saw a few people tumbling down from the martial arts stage not far away from him. What happened? Chen Xiang asked a middle-aged man right beside him. The middle-aged man, after seeing Chen Xiang, could not help but be surprised, and others around him were also surprised. Simultaneously, everyone started telling Chen Xiang what had happened in his absence. Soon, Chen Xiang came to learn what had occurred. He looked towards the high stage at Elder Dan and Wu Kaming. His pupils fiercely contracted when he came upon a very familiar face. It was a very handsome face, the forehead was giving off a slight aura of arrogance, yet it did not make others feel disgusted. Seeing this man, Chen Xiang clenched his fists as his nails dug deeply into his palm. This man was Liao Xiaoyun. After coming back from the Fragrant City, he came to learn some things about Liao Xiaoyun. The results gave no small surprise to him. Chen Xiang had not expected Liao Xiaoyun to actually be an elder of the true martial sect. Furthermore, he was also at the verge of becoming the youngest martial artist to enter the Nirvana realm. With such an amazing talent, he was a very important figure of true martial sect. Today, both the true martial sects and beast marital sects elders, along with their sect's disciples, came to partake 1P8 in the Extreme Martial Sects Grand Tournament. Furthermore, they also proposed to allow their own sect disciples to learn with the Extreme Martial Sects disciples before defeating all of them. Chapter 146C Through the Conspiracy. Chapter 146C Through the Conspiracy. The disciples sent by the Beast Martial Sect and the True Martial Sect were very strong. All of them suddenly defeated the 8 Extreme Martial Sects disciples that could partake 1P8 in the final round. Also, they had publicly challenged some disciples in the audiences, while some powerful Extreme Martial Sects disciples at the same time came on the stage, but they were all defeated. Elder Wu, my disciples had won against the strongest 8 disciples of your inner courtyard. Shouldn't the 100 true elemental Dan and 100,000 crystal stones be given to me for my disciples? Liao Xiaoyun had a faint smile on his face as he asked Wu Kaming beside him. He intentionally raised his voice, so that the other people could also hear him. Today, the Beast Martial Sect and the True Martial Sect were simply hitting wherever they went. While most of the strongest disciples of the Extreme Martial Sect had now already entered into the True Martial Realm, such as the 4 powerful disciples of the First Inner Courtyard, among the 4 of them, 3 were now in the True Martial Realm. As for Chen Xiang, he was nowhere to be seen. Chen Xiang, go up and teach these guys a good lesson, let them know our Extreme Martial Sect is also formidable. A middle-aged man shouted. One by one everyone beside Chen Xiang started shouting. Chen Xiang was originally very upset for not being able to partake 1P8 in the martial art compet 1 Tian. However, now that the opportunity had presented itself, it was very highly likely for him to get those 100 true elemental Dan and 100,000 crystal stones. Of course, Chen Xiang also had to make those 2 sects, who were rampaging wherever they went, to suffer a little bit. Chen Xiang lightly took a leap, stepped on the air just like a beautiful rainbow arc, then landed on the martial arts stage. Long-awaited Chen Xiang was eliminated 5 days ago. Many people were very regretful due to this. However, Chen Xiang had now appeared at the most crucial moment. This made them very excited. Many people had personally witnessed Chen Xiang's strength. That was not some ordinary strength. Many of them believed that Chen Xiang would be able to fight even those who were at True Martial Realm. Chen Xiang was now in the True Martial Realm. Even if the opponent was someone in first level of True Martial Realm, or even the second level, he was not a least bit afraid. Once he arrived at the stage, Chen Xiang looked at Liao Xiaoyun above the high stage, not far away from him. Both his eyes were overflowing with murderous intention. He would never forget how Liao Xiaoyun trampled over him. He had already sworn he would definitely behead Liao Xiaoyun and have his revenge. When Liao Xiaoyun arrived, he already knew what happened to Chen Xiang. Because Chen Xiang was not on time to partake 1P8 in the qualifiers, he was eliminated. But regarding Chen Xiang, he was just a little concerned about him. He didn't think too much about him. After all, he was someone who was just about to enter the Nirvana realm. This small ant wasn't able to enter in his eye. Many people knew of the things between Chen Xiang and Liao Xiaoyun. That day Chen Xiang had almost died in the hands of Liao Xiaoyun. But now Liao Xiaoyun had dared to come to the extreme martial sect. He simply had not placed the extreme martial sect in his eyes. I've come to compare notes with them. Chen Xiang looked at Wu Keiming and saw him nodding his head, with eyes filled with smile. Now he knew that Chen Xiang had appeared. Extreme martial sect would be able to save their face. Humph, didn't you not partic 1p. Aided in the qualifiers just because of a stage fright? Why have you now appeared to get tortured? Liao Xiaoyun sneered and said. He suddenly found Chen Xiang very hateful, especially the look of hatred in the eyes of Chen Xiang. That is because I had to attend some matters temporarily. I'm an extreme martial sect's disciple. Don't you want to challenge the extreme martial sect's disciples? Chen Xiang didn't look at Liao Xiaoyun. Instead, he faced the two disciples of the beast martial sect and true martial sect. Whatever, in short, getting injured is inevitable. At that time, don't complain to us. Liao Xiaoyun looked at Chen Xiang with a frown. Being ignored like this by Chen Xiang, it made him somewhat unhappy in his heart. He certainly knew Chen Xiang hate him to death. At this time Long Shui said in a tender voice, "These two guys has just entered into the true martial realm. Their bodies have a strange energy in their dantian which is masking off their breath. That's why it is very difficult to see. That thing should be called runes." Chen Xiang in his heart was surprised, clenched his fists even more tightly. At the same time he was very excited. Now he knew why the beast martial sect and true martial sect dared to break everything wherever they went, and only sent two people. These two had hidden their true martial realm very well. Naturally, they would not have any opponents in the mortal martial realm. However, now they had ran into Chen Xiang, who had also very well hidden his true martial realm, and not to mention his strength which was much higher than others of the same level. Chen Xiang secretly chuckled in his heart. He had extreme hate for both the beast martial sect and the true martial sect, and now that these two sects' newly advanced young true martial realm disciples had come to compete with him, he would naturally not be any lenient. "Who is coming first from you?" Chen Xiang asked. "Do you dare to have a life and death fight?" One robust guy looking more like a bull spoke. He was the disciple of the beast martial sect. If Chen Xiang was killed, he could get the 300,000 crystal stones reward. Now that such a good opportunity had presented itself, how could the big guy let it go? Just as both Elder Dan and Wu Keiming wanted to open their mouth and stop him, they heard the immediate reply of Chen Xiang's. "Dare? Come if you want to come, let's see who's afraid of who?" Life and death fight, as long as both sides agreed, and if there were a lot of people who could testify, then it can be started. If any of them unfortunately died, the forces behind him could not hold the survivor accountable. This beast martial sect's disciple was called Niu Hao, with a robust body. He was even a head taller than Chen Xiang. That body looked more like a small giant, his whole body brim, with power, giving off a kind of oppressive feeling. Chen Xiang, the runes should be attached at his dantian's location. You should wait for an appropriate moment and burn off that rune. Afterwards, it will allow you to reveal his strength. Long Shui transmitted to Chen Xiang with divine sense. Spirit runes did have this kind of benefits. Chen Xiang, whenever he could, especially during his idle time, would also study these spirit runes. But he still had no idea, after all. He was trying to grab something in the darkness, without any kind of guidance. Although both Elder Dan and Wu Keiming could have prevented this life and death fight, in the end they didn't stop it. Both of them knew that the reason why Chen Xiang could become their young martial uncle was certainly because he was someone extraordinary. Besides, they had already seen Chen Xiang's strength. However, they were still somewhat concerned in their heart. Not to mention the beast martial sect's disciples. Even some disciples of the extreme martial sect wanted to kill Chen Xiang. Simply because Chen Xiang was worth 300,000 crystal stones, this sum was very attractive to many. As Chen Xiang knew the opponent was also in the true martial realm, he didn't dare to underestimate the enemy. Start. Wu Keiming was the one who issued this order. The beast martial sects and the true martial sects disciples had come, and this made him feel very unhappy, but he was still unable to do anything, even if they had been making irresponsible remarks. However, he hadn't expected that two strong and young disciples of the beast martial sect and the true martial sect would actually arrive and break the balance. Once his words had been heard by everyone, Niu Hao fiercely let out a roar. The martial arts stage completely constructed from hard rock severely shook. However, this didn't affect Chen Xiang. At the same time, Chen Xiang also let out a roar. However, his roar was accompanied by a wave of azure and lightning chi aura which came out from his mouth, and like a fountain, it rushed towards Niu Hao. Chen Xiang didn't utilize all of his strength, otherwise, the strength of the true martial realm could be revealed. If that happened, Liao Xiaoyun and others would be able to see through his strength, and that would be very troublesome for him. Unless he let the other party expose their true martial realm strength, only then would Chen Xiang be able to justifiably beat the other person. Even if his true martial realm was revealed at that time, it would be nothing. The azure lightning chi aura released from the mouth of Chen Xiang would be fatal to mortal martial realm martial artists, but for Niu Hao it was nothing. Because he was in the true martial realm, and with his terrifying strength, he would be able to counteract this kind of power. But he didn't expect Chen Xiang would mix a bunch of powerful flames when he emitted the dragon roar, which in turn directly struck Niu Hai's Dantian's location and burned off his clothes. Chen Xiang's flames were the vermilion bird's flames of the true martial realm. It was not something easily extinguishable by an ordinary true martial realm martial artist. Niu Hai was surprised in his heart as he gathered the true qi above both of his hands. While he was smacking the flames above his abdomen, he was vigilant against Chen Xiang's attack. However, Chen Xiang didn't have any intention of attacking him. Flames spread quickly, and not long after, Chen Xiang could see those flames suddenly changing the colors. His eyes lit up. He reckoned this was the phenomena due to the burning of the spirit runes. Wu Keiming's brow suddenly wrinkled, because this Niu Hao's body released a very powerful breath, and it was just that only true martial realm martial artist should be able to have this kind of breath. True martial realm. Elder Dan's voice was incomparably cold, as if it came from the 9th level of the underworld. One more to come. Chapter 147 Devil Bao reappears. Chapter 147 Devil Bao reappears. The elder of the beast martial sect was suddenly sweating profusely. He could feel the anger of Elder Dan and Wu Keiming, but this elder could also be counted as an old fogey. He immediately said in a heavy tone, "No wonder this Niu Hao was so confident originally. He has actually entered the true martial realm. Although it is a good thing, but he still hid it from us. After we return, we must impose heavy penalties on him." Although the beast martial sect's elders said that they knew nothing about Niu Hao, and everything was the fault of Niu Hao, Elder Dan and Wu Keiming didn't believe a single word of it. Should we stop the contest? Liao Xiaoyun was very calm at this moment as he dismissively said, as if he had nothing to do with all this. No need. Look at Chen Xiang's appearance. He too hid the matter of him advancing to the true martial realm. I think he broke through in these past few days. Wu Keiming just faintly smiled, because he could see Chen Xiang intentionally revealed his own strength. Both he and Elder Dan were very curious how Chen Xiang was able to see through Niu Hao's strength. The whole body of the beast martial sect's elder was trembling. His complexion became pale. With a dignified look, he gazed at the martial arts stage. If Chen Xiang had entered the true martial realm, then the outcome of this compet. 1. Tian would be difficult to predict. Furthermore, this was a life-and-death fight. Insignificant skills, go die. Chen Xiang made Niu Hao choke in rage. He let out a shout, before a golden bull's head suddenly appeared on his thick arms. His chi aura was cemented into a lifelike bull's head, along with a pair of sharp big horns on it. Although Niu Hao looked very big, his speed was not at all slow. He swiftly and violently waved that giant arms of his and blasted a violent and fierce fist towards Chen Xiang. Just as those bull horns were just about to pierce 2 holes in Chen Xiang's body, Chen Xiang was suddenly nowhere to be seen. But everyone could see waves of Chen Xiang's breath spreading from the stage one after another. Chen Xiang, in an extreme speed, was madly ing on the stage without releasing a single sound. Chen Xiang, using high-speed movements, escaped Niu Hao's fist. At the same time, he hid his own whereabouts. Although Niu Hao was able to identify Chen Xiang's location through Chen Xiang's breath, Chen Xiang was still moving too fast. Suddenly he would be in the left, and in the next instance, he would be in the right, making it harder for Niu Hao to determine from where would Chen Xiang attack. This kind of speed made Niu Hao secretly astonished. Right now, he also suspected Chen Xiang was also a true martial realm martial artist. Since it was a life and death fight, and the other party too wanted to kill him, Chen Xiang would certainly not stay his hand. Everyone was calmly looking at the martial arts stage, waiting for Chen Xiang to attack. As of this moment, the atmosphere was very depressing because no one knew from which direction Chen Xiang would attack. Suddenly, Chen Xiang appeared, and Niu Hao too grabbed towards the direction where Chen Xiang came from. Niu Hao quickly turned it into a fist. However, Chen Xiang had still lightly avoided Niu Hao's violent and frightening fist of horned bull's head. Chen Xiang's palm was like the tip of a spear, wrapped in a thin true qi, but with quite an overbearing breath. At the same time, he was dodging Niu Hao's fist. His palm that was like the tip of a spear already pierced towards Niu Hao's heart. Profound aura finger. Someone with good eyesight would be able to recognize it in a mere glance. With this formidable martial skill, the caster hands would be able to become as sharp as a divine weapon. Last time, Chen Xiang had used this profound aura finger to pinch off a few well-known spirit weapons. Chen Xiang's hand penetrated Niu Hao's body and came out from his back. Afterwards, he fiercely pulled back his hand as he poised himself to shoot his left arm, then blasted a strike on Niu Hao's dantian. An explosion burst forth as the whole martial arts stage suddenly collapsed, and the stones flew in every direction. It was actually shocking heaven palm. Chen Xiang had spent a lot of power in using this attack, not to mention that he had also struck above Niu Hao's dantian. When he had struck on Niu Hao's dantian, he could feel a large amount of true qi bursting and spewing out from Niu Hao's dantian. The dust was blown away by the wind released by Chen Xiang. The martial arts stage was already turned into a pile of scattered and broken stones. Niu Hao was constantly throwing up blood, and he had already lost consciousness. Chen Xiang let out a light shout and landed a kick on Niu Hao's waist. A powerful qi burst out from his leg before Niu Hao flew towards Liao Xiaoyun. At this time, the whole body of the beast martial sect elder was trembling. He was checking the extent of Niu Hao's injury. Although Chen Xiang hadn't killed Niu Hao was crippled, and from head to toe, there was not a single organ left intact in Niu Hao's body. I've won against the beast martial sect's disciple. Next one should be the true martial sect, right? Chen Xiang, while looking at the delicate and pretty man standing beside Liao Xiaoyun, loudly spoke. At this point, both Elder Dan and Wu Keiming were certain Chen Xiang had entered the true martial realm. Liao Xiaoyun and the beast martial sect elder also had not expected Chen Xiang would actually break through in these short 5 days. However, Chen Xiang had still not revealed anything. He was letting the true martial realm martial artist pose as a mortal martial realm martial artist. Since Chen Xiang wanted to fight, Liao Xiaoyun would also accompany him till the end. He spoke a few words with the delicate and pretty man beside him. Afterwards, Chen Xiang suddenly saw a black crossbow appear in the hands of that delicate and pretty man. This was exactly the demanding life devil bow which Chen Xiang had obtained previously by killing a man from the 100 Poison sect. Who didn't knew about this matter? Liao Xiaoyun had robbed Qin Xiang's spoils of war. Life and death fight. That delicate and pretty man floated and arrived in front of Qin Xiang. His voice was devoid of any emotion. Good. Qin Xiang only looked at that demanding life devil bow which truly belonged to him. Today, he would definitely take it back. Wu Kaming calmly said, Liao Xiaoyun, that demanding life devil bow is what Qin Xiang had obtained. Why did you seize it from him? After they finish fighting, you need to give me a satisfactory answer. That day, why were you against Qin Xiang? I'll also investigate this matter. Liao Xiaoyun slightly trembled. That day, he only thought Qin Xiang was merely an ant in the mortal martial realm. If he wanted to kill him, he could kill him without any worry, and the extreme martial sect would not do anything. However, now Qin Xiang had entered the true martial realm, and was also a level 4 alchemist with such a kind of talent, whichever major sect he went to, he would receive serious attention. Young man, do not be crazy. You're still too tender. Elder Dan coldly said. Qin Xiang was her young martial uncle. Obviously, she would help Qin Xiang, even though she and Qin Xiang would not see eye to eye. The delicate and pretty man grabbing the demanding life devil bow was called Zhao Qing. He had recently entered the true martial realm. Not too long ago, he had also wounded a few extreme martial sect's disciples, but he actually took out a spirit weapon during a martial art contest. Seeing this, many people secretly despised him. Extreme martial sect's disciples still didn't know that the disciples sent by the beast martial sect and the true martial sect were pretenders in true martial realm. Otherwise, they would have already been drowned in spits and curses. Liao Xiaoyun still believed Qin Xiang hitting Niu Hao and destroying the spirit runes for concealing the cultivation which revealed Niu Hao's power level was only accidental. That was why he didn't worry about anything. As long as Zhao Chen was not found out, he wouldn't have any relation whatsoever. Start! Liao Xiaoyun shouted. Just as his voice fell, a black arrow was suddenly shot from the demanding life devil bow in the hands of Zhao Qing. Everyone could see that black arrow shot into Qin Xiang's body. This made the hearts of many people shocked, and everyone thought Qin Xiang was finished.